Hello, and welcome to ThinkSleep, where big questions become gentle companions for the night, and curiosity finds its rhythm in rest. Tonight we're going to explore something you've experienced countless times, but might never have questioned in quite this way. What if dreams, those strange voyages we take every night when we close our eyes, aren't just random firings of neurons or the brain sorting through the day's memories? What if there's something else entirely? What if, when you dream, you're not imagining another world, you're actually visiting one? This is a question that sits at the intersection of science, philosophy, and personal experience. It doesn't demand that you believe anything in particular, only that you wander alongside me for a while, letting the possibility settle in your thoughts like snow falling on quiet ground. Before we begin, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from tonight and what time it is where you are. It's a small connection, but it reminds us that while we each experience our own private dreams, we're part of something shared, this moment, this wandering, this slow drift towards sleep. If you find value in these explorations, I'd be grateful if you liked this video, subscribed to the channel, or left a comment below. It helps others discover these quiet journeys, and it lets me know you're out there, listening, wondering, drifting. No pressure, just an invitation. So settle in now, let your breathing slow, and allow your mind to open gently to a question that might change the way you think about what happens every single night when you close your eyes and let consciousness slip into somewhere else. Because before we can ask whether dreams are alternate realities, we need to understand what dreams actually are, or at least what we think they are. Dreams are universal. Every human culture throughout history has experienced them, wondered about them, tried to interpret them. From the ancient Egyptians who believed dreams were messages from the gods, to modern neuroscientists who study them with brain scans and sleep labs, dreams have occupied a special place in human consciousness. They're familiar and strange at the same time, personal yet somehow archetypal, fleeting yet occasionally unforgettable. When you dream, you enter a world that follows its own logic. Things that would be impossible in waking life feel perfectly normal. You might find yourself flying without wings, talking to people who've been dead for years, or walking through your childhood home only to discover it has rooms that never existed. The laws of physics bend, time stretches and compresses. You accept impossibilities without question because in the moment it all makes sense. The dream has its own internal consistency, even if that consistency wouldn't survive the scrutiny of daylight. And while you're in the dream, it feels completely real. Your emotions are genuine. Fear in a nightmare is actual fear. Joy in a pleasant dream is true joy. The sensations register in your body as authentic experiences. Your brain doesn't seem to differentiate between the reality of the dream and the reality you'll wake to. Both are simply reality, while you're experiencing them. This is important. It's not that dreams feel sort of real or approximately real. They feel entirely real until the moment you wake up and realize they weren't. And even then, sometimes it takes a few seconds for your mind to reorient, to remember which world is which, to reassure itself that yes, you're here, in bed, in your room, in the life you recognize. That brief confusion at the boundary between sleeping and waking reveals something significant. Your consciousness doesn't automatically know which experience is the real one. So what are dreams exactly? The standard scientific explanation suggests they're the brain's way of processing information, consolidating memories, working through emotional content, running maintenance routines while the body rests. Dreams, in this view, are essentially hallucinations produced by neural activity during certain stages of sleep. They're generated internally, constructed from fragments of memory, sensation, emotion, and random neural noise, assembled into something that resembles a narrative or an experience. This explanation makes sense. It's grounded in neuroscience, supported by research, and consistent with what we know about how the brain works. Dreams correlate with specific brain states. They happen during particular phases of sleep. They can be influenced by external stimuli, medications, stress levels, what you ate before bed. They seem to be, quite straightforwardly, products of your own mind. But there's something about that explanation that doesn't quite capture the full strangeness of dreaming. Because if dreams are just your brain talking to itself, why do they so often feel like you're somewhere else? Not imagining somewhere else, but actually there, inhabiting a space that exists independently of your awareness of it. Why do dream environments sometimes have a persistence to them, a sense that they were there before you arrived and will continue after you leave? Why do the people in your dreams sometimes seem like complete individuals with their own agency, rather than puppets controlled by your subconscious? These questions don't disprove the neurological explanation. They just suggest there might be more to explore. And that's what we're here to do tonight. Not to dismiss science, but to ask what else might be possible. What other frameworks might help us understand this nightly journey we all take? This regular departure from consensus reality into something stranger, softer, and endlessly variable. Consider how dreams blend the familiar with the impossible. You might dream about your actual house, but the layout is wrong. There are extra rooms, or rooms in different places, or doors that lead outside when they should lead to the hallway. You know it's your house because it feels like your house, because some essential quality identifies it as home, but the details don't match. Is this just your memory being imperfect, scrambling the floor plan? Or could it be that you're visiting a version of your house that exists somewhere else, in a reality where the rooms were arranged differently, where choices were made that led to a different architecture? Or think about the people you meet in dreams. Sometimes they're people you know, but they act out of character. They say things the real person would never say, or they have knowledge they shouldn't have. Other times they're complete strangers, individuals you've never seen before, with faces your brain supposedly invented on the spot. But they feel real. They have presence. They respond to you in ways that seem too complex, too unpredictable, to be simple projections of your own mind. What if they're not projections? What if, when you dream, your consciousness is actually making contact with other versions of people, other versions of places, other versions of events that unfolded differently in another timeline, another reality running parallel to this one? It sounds fantastical. It sounds like something that belongs in science fiction rather than serious consideration. But before we dismiss it, before we retreat to the safety of conventional explanations, let's sit with the possibility for a while. Let's explore what it would mean, how it might work, and whether it changes anything about how we understand ourselves and our place in the universe. Because the question of what dreams are is intimately connected to the question of what consciousness is, what reality is, and whether the universe we inhabit is singular or one among many. These are not small questions. They're the kind of questions that have occupied philosophers, physicists, and mystics for centuries. And while we may not answer them tonight, we can walk through them slowly, carefully, letting each idea have its moment before we move to the next. So let's begin with the brain, with sleep, with the physical processes we can measure and study. Let's start with what we know, or think we know, about what happens when you close your eyes and drift away from this world into another. sleep is not a single state. It's a cycle, a journey through different phases, each with its own characteristics, its own brainwave patterns, its own purpose. When you first fall asleep, you descend through stages of progressively deeper rest. Your heart rate slows, your muscles relax, your body temperature drops slightly. This is non-REM sleep, divided into stages that take you from light drowsiness to the deepest, most restorative rest your body will experience all night. But then, about 90 minutes after you first fall asleep, something changes. Your brain becomes more active. Your eyes begin to move rapidly beneath your closed eyelids, darting back and forth as if watching something. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes irregular, and yet your body remains essentially paralyzed, held in a state of temporary muscle atonia that prevents you from acting out what you're experiencing. This is REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, and this is when the most vivid, narrative-driven dreams occur. During REM sleep, your brain is remarkably active. Scans show that certain areas light up with activity levels comparable to waking consciousness. The visual cortex fires intensely, processing images and scenes. The amygdala, involved in emotional processing, becomes highly active, which explains why dreams can be so emotionally charged. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for logical thinking and reality testing, shows reduced activity. This is why dreams feel real while you're having them. The part of your brain that normally says, "Wait, this doesn't make sense," is essentially offline. From a purely neurological perspective, this makes perfect sense. The brain is doing something during REM sleep, something important enough that evolution has preserved it across virtually all mammals and many other species. It's consolidating memories, strengthening neural pathways, processing emotional experiences from the day. The dream content, the actual narrative you experience, might just be your conscious mind's attempt to make sense of all this background processing, to create a story from the random activation of different brain regions. This is the scientific consensus, more or less. Dreams are byproducts, epiphenomena, the subjective experience of necessary neural maintenance. They feel meaningful because our brains are wired to find patterns and create narratives, but they don't necessarily mean anything beyond what they reveal about our own thoughts, fears, memories, and preoccupations. And yet, there's something the neuroscience doesn't quite capture, at least not yet. Because while we can measure brain activity during dreams, while we can identify which regions are active and which are suppressed, we still don't really understand why the subjective experience of dreaming feels the way it does. We don't know why consciousness persists during sleep at all, or what it's doing there. Consciousness itself remains one of the great mysteries of science. We know it correlates with certain brain states. We know that damage to certain brain regions can alter or eliminate aspects of conscious experience. We know that consciousness seems to emerge from the complexity of neural networks, from billions of neurons communicating through trillions of connections. But we don't know how that emergence happens. We don't know why electrochemical signals in neurons give rise to the felt quality of experience, to the sensation of being someone, of experiencing red or pain or joy or wonder. This is called the hard problem of consciousness, and it remains unsolved despite decades of research. And if we don't fully understand consciousness during waking life, we understand it even less during sleep. We can see that the brain is active during REM sleep, but we can't directly access what that activity feels like from the inside. We only have the reports people give when they wake up, the memories of dreams that survive the transition back to waking consciousness. And those memories reveal something interesting. During a dream, your brain can't tell the difference between the dream and reality. The neural signatures are similar. The sense of presence, of being somewhere, is identical. When you dream you're walking through a forest, your brain processes that experience the same way it would process actually walking through a forest. These same regions activate. The same sense of spatial awareness, of moving through three-dimensional space, of seeing light filter through leaves, of hearing sounds, of feeling temperature and texture. All of it registers as real experience, which raises an uncomfortable question. If your brain can't tell the difference between dreaming and waking, at least not while you're in the dream, then what makes waking life more real? The obvious answer is that waking life is consistent. It has continuity. Other people share it with you. The laws of physics remain stable. When you leave a room and come back, things are generally where you left them. Reality, in other words, has a kind of persistent objectivity that dreams lack. But is that entirely true? Dreams also have consistency, at least within themselves. Dream worlds follow their own rules. Those rules might be different from waking physics, but they're often internally coherent. You can't usually just decide to fly in a dream unless the dream logic permits it. You can't usually change what other dream characters do simply by willing it. The dream has a structure, a reality of its own, that resists your conscious control. And while dreams don't usually have continuity from night to night, they sometimes do. People report recurring dreams, dreams that pick up where previous dreams left off, or dreams that take place in the same locations night after night. These dream locations often don't correspond to any real place, yet they feel familiar, known, like somewhere you've been many times before. What are these places? If they're just creations of your imagination, why do they persist? Why do they have a geography that remains stable across multiple dreams, sometimes across years? The standard explanation would be that your brain has stored these imagined locations in memory and retrieves them when constructing new dreams. You're recycling mental constructs, nothing more. But that explanation requires us to believe that your brain can invent entire, consistent environments, remember them perfectly, and recreate them with detail and depth that rivals waking experience. All while you're asleep and the parts of your brain responsible for logic and executive function are largely inactive. It's not impossible. The brain is extraordinarily capable. But it does invite us to consider other possibilities. What if those recurring dream locations aren't inventions at all? What if they're places that exist somewhere, in some reality adjacent to this one, and your consciousness is returning to them the way you might return to a familiar cafe or a favorite walking path? This is where the science begins to blur into something stranger. Because to seriously consider that possibility, we need to step beyond neuroscience and into physics, into the nature of reality itself, into questions about whether the universe we inhabit is the only one, or whether there might be others, perhaps infinitely many others, existing alongside this one in ways we're only beginning to understand. The brain science gives us a framework for understanding the mechanism of dreaming, the how of it. But it doesn't necessarily explain the what. It doesn't tell us what we're actually experiencing when we dream, whether we're hallucinating or perceiving, creating or discovering, alone inside our own skull, or briefly touching something that exists beyond it. And so we move from the measurable to the theoretical, from the laboratory to the realm of possibility. We move from neurons firing to consciousness traveling, from brain states to alternate realities. We move, in other words, to the question of what else might be out there, running parallel to this moment, this life, this version of you lying here in the dark, wondering. The idea that our universe might not be the only one is not new, and it's not fringe science. It emerges from serious physics, from mathematics, from attempts to understand the fundamental nature of reality. The multiverse theory, in its various forms, suggests that what we call the universe, everything we can see or measure or theoretically reach, might be just one bubble in an infinite foam of universes, each with its own laws, its own history, its own version of events. There are different ways to arrive at this conclusion. Some come from cosmology, from the mathematics of inflation, that describe how the universe expanded in its first moments. Those equations suggest that inflation might not have happened just once, but continuously, spawning new universe bubbles constantly, each one ballooning into its own separate space-time. Others come from string theory, which proposes that reality has more dimensions than we can perceive, and that different configurations of these dimensions might create vastly different universes with different physical constants and possibilities. But the version most relevant to our question about dreams comes from quantum mechanics, specifically from something called the many worlds interpretation. This interpretation was proposed in 1957 by physicist Hugh Everett, and it offers a radical solution to one of the strangest problems in quantum physics. At the quantum level, particles exist in superposition. They can be in multiple states simultaneously until they're measured or observed. An electron can be spinning both clockwise and counterclockwise at the same time. A particle can be in two places at once. This isn't metaphor or approximation. It's what the mathematics describes, and it's been confirmed by countless experiments. But when you measure the particle, when you observe it, the superposition collapses. The particle suddenly has a definite state, a specific location, a single spin direction. Why does observation cause this collapse? What mechanism forces reality to choose one option when previously all options existed simultaneously? This is the measurement problem, and different interpretations of quantum mechanics answer it differently. The many worlds interpretation says there is no collapse. Instead, when a measurement happens, when a choice point is reached, reality splits. Both outcomes occur, but in separate, branching universes. The electron spins clockwise in one universe and counterclockwise in another. You measure one result in this universe, but there's another version of you in another universe measuring the opposite result. Both versions are equally real, both continue forward, both experience themselves as living in the one true reality. This branching happens constantly, at every quantum interaction, which means at every moment. The number of parallel universes is incomprehensibly vast and growing exponentially with each passing instant. Every choice you make, every decision, every random quantum event creates a split. There's a universe where you took the job and a universe where you didn't. A universe where you said yes and a universe where you said no. A universe where you're reading these words right now and a universe where you closed this video 5 minutes ago. The mathematics of quantum mechanics doesn't require this interpretation, but it's consistent with it. And for many physicists, it's actually the most straightforward reading of the equations, the one that takes quantum superposition seriously without adding extra mechanisms to explain why it seems to disappear at the macroscopic level. If the many worlds interpretation is correct, then right now, at this very moment, there are countless versions of you existing in parallel realities. Most of them are nearly identical to the you reading these words. They made the same choices today, wore the same clothes, ate the same meals. But some diverged earlier, made different decisions, took different paths. and the further back the divergence, the more different their lives become from yours. There's a version of you who chose a different career, who lives in a different city, who never met certain people and met others instead. There's a version who made a crucial choice differently 10 years ago and has lived an entirely different life since then. There are versions where small moments of chance went another way, where you turned left instead of right, where you spoke instead of staying silent, where random events aligned differently and changed everything. Now here's where it connects to dreams. If consciousness is somehow fundamental, if it's not just an emergent property of neurons but something more basic, woven into the fabric of reality itself, then perhaps consciousness isn't bound to just one timeline, one universe, one version of events. Perhaps when you sleep, when the normal anchoring mechanisms of waking consciousness relax, your awareness can slip sideways, drift into adjacent timelines, experience moments from the lives of other versions of yourself. This would explain the strange familiarity of dream environments. They're not quite your house, but almost your house, because they're the house from a reality where slightly different choices were made during renovation, where a room was added or a wall was removed or furniture arranged differently. It would explain why dream people sometimes feel so real and autonomous, because they are real. They're versions of people you know living their lives in parallel timelines, and your consciousness is briefly intersecting with theirs. It would explain prophetic dreams, not as predictions of the future, but as glimpses of timelines slightly ahead of yours where events have already unfolded. It would explain déjà vu as the sensation of two timelines briefly synchronizing, moments where your life in this reality mirrors something you experienced in a dream, which was actually an experience from another reality bleeding through. This is speculation, of course. There's no empirical proof that consciousness can hop between parallel universes during sleep. But the many worlds interpretation gives us a framework where such a thing becomes at least theoretically possible. If countless parallel realities exist, all equally real, all populated by versions of everyone and everything, then perhaps the boundaries between them aren't as absolute as we assume. Perhaps consciousness, which we barely understand anyway, has properties that allow it to move or perceive across those boundaries under certain conditions. And sleep might be one of those conditions, when the brain's normal reality testing mechanisms are suppressed, when the prefrontal cortex goes quiet and consciousness is left to wander without logical constraints. Perhaps it does exactly that. It wanders, not through imagination, but through the actual landscape of parallel possibilities, visiting realities that branch from this one, experiencing moments from lives you might have lived, are living, somewhere in the infinite garden of forking paths. What is consciousness? It's a question that seems simple until you try to answer it. You know you're conscious. You're aware of reading these words, of having thoughts about them, of existing as someone to whom experiences happen. There's something it's like to be you, a felt quality to your existence that goes beyond mere information processing. But what creates that quality? Where does it come from? And perhaps most importantly for our purposes tonight, where does it reside? The conventional view places consciousness firmly in the brain. Your sense of self, your awareness, your entire subjective experience, all of it emerges from neural activity. When neurons fire in certain patterns, consciousness arises. Change the patterns through injury or drugs or disease, and consciousness changes or disappears. The correlation seems absolute. No brain activity, no consciousness. Different brain activity, different consciousness. It's neat, materialist, and mostly satisfying as an explanation. Except it doesn't actually explain anything. It describes correlation without addressing causation. It tells us that consciousness and brain activity go together without explaining why electrochemical signals should produce subjective experience at all. Why shouldn't the brain simply process information unconsciously, like a computer, without anyone being home to experience it? What makes the lights turn on? What creates the felt sense of being someone? This is the hard problem of consciousness, and it remains untouched by neuroscience. We can map every neuron, trace every connection, measure every chemical, and still not understand why any of it should feel like anything from the inside. The explanatory gap between objective physical processes and subjective experience seems unbridgeable. Matter doing what matter does shouldn't, by any logic we understand, produce the sensation of being. Some philosophers and scientists have suggested a different approach. Perhaps consciousness isn't produced by the brain. Perhaps it's fundamental to reality itself, like space or time or energy. Perhaps it's woven into the fabric of the universe at the most basic level, and what the brain does is not create consciousness, but focus it, filter it, tune it to particular frequencies or channels. In this view, your brain is less like a generator and more like a radio, receiving and processing something that exists independently. This idea, called panpsychism in its various forms, sounds mystical but has gained surprising traction among serious thinkers trying to solve the hard problem. If consciousness is fundamental rather than emergent, if it's a basic property of reality rather than a byproduct of complexity, then suddenly different possibilities open up. Because if consciousness exists independently of any particular brain, then its relationship to that brain becomes more flexible, more negotiable. Your waking consciousness, the you that navigates daily life, might be consciousness focused tightly through the lens of your particular brain, anchored firmly to your body, to this timeline, to this version of events. But during sleep, when that anchoring loosens, when the brain's normal focusing mechanisms relax, perhaps consciousness becomes more diffuse, less tightly bound. Perhaps it can drift, spread out, touch other timelines where other versions of your body exist, other versions of your brain that are tuning slightly different frequencies. Think about what happens as you fall asleep. Your sense of having a fixed location begins to blur. Your awareness of your body becomes less defined. The boundary between you and not you, normally so clear, starts to dissolve. You might experience hypnagogic hallucinations, those strange images and sensations that arise in the borderland between waking and sleeping. Time becomes elastic. A few seconds can feel like minutes, or minutes can vanish entirely. This transition state suggests that consciousness isn't an on-off switch. It's more like a spectrum, or perhaps a tuning dial. Full waking consciousness is tightly focused, sharply defined, anchored to sensory input from this body in this reality. But as you drift towards sleep, that focus softens, the anchor loosens, and perhaps, in that loosening, consciousness gains mobility. During deep sleep, your consciousness might expand beyond the confines of this single timeline. It might make contact with other versions of yourself in adjacent realities, experiencing moments from their lives, walking through their environments, engaging with their versions of people you know, not as an observer watching from outside, but as an experiencer, feeling what they feel, seeing what they see, inhabiting their perspective. This would feel, from the inside, exactly like dreaming, because it would be experiencing, just not experiencing this reality. These sensations would be real, because they're coming from real experiences in real timelines. The environments would have consistency and detail, because they're actual places, not constructions. The people would seem autonomous because they are autonomous. They're actual consciousnesses you're interacting with. versions of people living their own parallel lives. When you wake up, consciousness contracts again, focuses back through the lens of this particular brain, anchors to this body, this timeline, this version of events. The memories of where you've been, what you've experienced during the night, begin to fade immediately because they don't belong to this timeline's narrative. They're experiences from elsewhere, and bringing them fully into this reality would create confusion, contradiction. So your brain, designed to maintain a coherent sense of self and story, lets them go, allows them to dissolve back into the background noise of consciousness. But sometimes fragments remain. Sometimes you wake with a vivid memory of a dream that felt more real than usual, more significant. Sometimes you wake with knowledge you didn't have before, or a solution to a problem you'd been struggling with, or a shift in perspective that feels like it came from outside yourself. Perhaps these are the moments when consciousness brought something back, when an experience or insight from another timeline managed to cross the boundary and integrate into this one. This is all theoretical, of course. We have no way to prove that consciousness can travel between realities during sleep. We barely understand what consciousness is in the first place. But the theory has a certain elegance to it. It explains aspects of dreaming that the purely neurological model struggles with. It accounts for the realness of dream experience, the autonomy of dream characters, the consistency of dream environments, the sense that dreams are discoveries rather than inventions, and it suggests something profound about who and what you are. If consciousness can slip between timelines, if the you that experiences dreams is the same you that experiences waking life, just focused differently, then your identity is not confined to this single stream of events. You're not just the person living this particular life. You're something larger, something that exists across multiple realities simultaneously, experiencing different versions of possibilities, different paths through the infinite garden of choices and chances. Your waking self, the version of you that feels like the only you, might be just one expression of something more expansive. And every night, when you sleep, that larger consciousness takes the wheel, travels, explores, touches lives you're living elsewhere, and brings back whispers of those experiences in the form of dreams. There's a particular quality to dream places that's hard to describe but instantly recognizable once you pay attention to it. You're in a location that feels known, familiar, somewhere you've been before or somewhere that belongs to your life. But when you look closely, nothing is quite right. The proportions are off. Doorways lead to rooms that shouldn't exist. Streets connect in ways that defy geography. Your childhood bedroom has windows facing the wrong direction, or your current apartment contains hallways that stretch impossibly far. This isn't just vagueness or blurriness, the way memories naturally degrade over time. Dream locations often have sharp detail, clear visuals, specific features you can describe when you wake up. It's not that they're fuzzy approximations of real places. It's that they're precise versions of places that are almost but not quite the ones you know. The rightness is wrong. The familiarity is strange. Many people report having recurring dream locations that appear across multiple dreams, sometimes over years. There's a house they visit repeatedly that isn't their actual house but feels like home. There's a city they navigate again and again that resembles cities they've lived in, but has its own distinct geography, its own landmarks, its own logic. There's a building, a street, a landscape that shows up reliably in their dream life, as consistent as any real location they visit while awake. These places don't correspond to anywhere in waking reality. You can't find them on a map. You can't drive to them or give someone else directions, and yet they persist. They have a stability that seems at odds with the idea that your brain is simply inventing them fresh each time. If dreams are just random neural activity creating hallucinations, why would your brain bother maintaining a consistent geography across separate dreams? Why would it invest energy in preserving details of imaginary locations that serve no obvious function? The standard explanation suggests these are amalgamations, composite locations built from fragments of real places you've experienced, stitched together by memory and given enough consistency by repeated activation of the same neural patterns. Your dream city is parts of all the cities you've lived in, blended and rearranged. Your dream house is features from various houses you've known, assembled into something that feels coherent even though it never existed as a single structure. This is plausible. The brain absolutely does blend and recombine memories. It creates associations between disparate elements. It fills gaps with plausible details drawn from experience. But there's something about the explanation that feels incomplete when you compare it to the actual experience of being in these dream places. Because dream locations don't just feel like collages, they feel whole. They have an integrity, a sense of being themselves rather than compositions of other things. When you're walking through that recurring dream city, you're not thinking, oh, this corner is from Boston and that building is from Chicago. You're simply there, in a place that exists as itself, with its own identity and atmosphere and character. It feels less like your brain constructed it, and more like you discovered it. And sometimes the geography of these places is too complex, too internally consistent, to be easily explained as random construction. People report dream locations with multiple levels, intricate layouts, specific relationships between different areas. They remember how to navigate these places. They know that if you go down this hallway and turn left, you'll reach a particular room. They remember landmarks, shortcuts, details that remain stable from dream to dream. This suggests a kind of mapping, a mental model that persists and can be accessed reliably. What if these places aren't inventions at all? What if they're real locations that exist in parallel realities, and your consciousness is actually visiting them during sleep? In a timeline where different choices were made, where events unfolded differently, your house might have been renovated in another way. That extra room exists there even if it doesn't exist here. The hallway extends further in that version of your home because in that reality, there was space for it, or need for it, or simply because chance and circumstance led to different construction. The city you visit in dreams might be a version of a city you know, shaped by a different history. Streets connect differently because urban planning went another way. Buildings stand in different locations because different decisions were made about zoning, development, preservation. The overall feel is familiar because it's still recognizably the same city, just expressed through a different sequence of events, a different path through possibility. This would explain why dream locations feel known but wrong. They're not distorted memories of this reality. They're accurate perceptions of slightly different realities. Your consciousness recognizes the essential quality of the place, the core identity that persists across timelines, but notices the differences in details, in specifics, in the particular way that place manifests in that version of events. It would also explain why these locations persist. They're not being maintained by your memory. They're simply there, existing independently in their own realities, and your consciousness returns to them during sleep the way you might return to any familiar place. You're not recreating them each time, you're revisiting them. And just as a real place changes slowly over time, your dream places might also evolve. reflecting changes happening in those parallel timelines. Some people report that their recurring dream locations do change gradually. A building that was under construction in one dream is finished in a later dream. A store that existed in the dream city is gone the next time, replaced by something else. The house gains or loses features over multiple visits. This slow evolution mirrors how real places change, suggesting these dream locations might have their own timeline, their own ongoing existence independent of your visits. There's no way to prove this, of course. You can't bring back a photograph from a dream. You can't verify the existence of these places in any objective way. But the experience of them carries a weight, a sense of reality that's hard to dismiss as mere hallucination. Especially when you consider that people across cultures and throughout history have reported similar experiences, similar feelings that dream places are somehow real, somehow significant, somehow more than just mental projections. Perhaps the truth is simpler than we've made it. Perhaps when you dream about places, you're simply there, in versions of those places that exist in parallel realities. The familiar strangeness isn't a bug in your brain's memory system. It's an accurate perception of locations that are genuinely similar to, but distinct from the ones you know in waking life. And the fact that you can return to them, navigate them, remember them, suggests that they're not fleeting hallucinations but persistent realities that continue whether you're aware of them or not. You've almost certainly experienced it. You're in a moment, doing something ordinary, and suddenly you're struck by an overwhelming sense that this has happened before. Not something similar. This exact situation, this precise arrangement of people and words and sensory details. You've been here before, in this moment, experiencing exactly this. But that's impossible, because you know you haven't. The moment is new. The conversation is happening for the first time, and yet the feeling persists, unshakable, that you've already lived through this. This is déjà vu, French for already seen, and it's one of the strangest glitches in human experience. It happens to most people at some point, often multiple times throughout life. It lasts only seconds usually, a brief flash of impossible familiarity before the feeling fades and normal time resumes. Scientists have studied it, proposed various explanations, but none fully capture the eerie precision of the sensation. The neurological explanation suggests it's a timing error in the brain. Information from your senses gets processed through two slightly different pathways, and sometimes one pathway lags behind the other by a fraction of a second. When the delayed information arrives, your brain interprets it as a memory rather than a current perception, creating the false feeling of having experienced the moment before. It's a glitch, nothing more, a small misfire in the machinery of consciousness. This explanation is tidy and probably correct for at least some instances of déjà vu, but it doesn't account for the specific quality of the experience, the way it feels less like vague familiarity and more like precise recognition. People often report that during déjà vu they feel like they know what's about to happen next, what words will be spoken, what will occur in the following seconds. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes the moment unfolds exactly as they somehow knew it would, deepening the strangeness rather than resolving it. And there's another curious connection. Many people report that their déjà vu experiences feel linked to dreams. The moment feels familiar not because they've lived it before in waking life, but because they've dreamed it. They have a dim, uncertain memory of experiencing this exact situation in a dream weeks or months earlier, though the dream itself has long since faded from conscious recall. The déjà vu is the shock of recognition, the collision between a forgotten dream and a waking moment that mirrors it exactly. This happens more often than you might think. People dismiss it because it sounds implausible, too convenient, too much like the brain inventing explanations after the fact. But the reports are consistent across cultures and ages. The feeling that a current moment was previewed in a dream, that the dream was somehow showing something that hadn't happened yet but eventually would. If dreams are just random neural noise, just the brain processing memories and emotions, then this should never happen. Dreams shouldn't predict future events because there's no mechanism for them to access information that doesn't exist yet. Any apparent connection between a dream and a later waking moment should be pure coincidence, pattern recognition, in a brain designed to find patterns everywhere, even where none exist. But what if dreams aren't confined to this timeline? What if, when you dream, your consciousness is experiencing moments from parallel realities that are slightly ahead of this one, realities where events have already unfolded in ways that closely mirror how they'll unfold here? In that case, a dream could genuinely show you something that hasn't happened yet in this timeline, but has already happened in another. When you wake, you forget most of it. The memory dissolves like dreams do, too foreign to this reality's narrative to persist in conscious recall. But somewhere deeper, some trace remains. And when the waking moment arrives that matches the dream moment, when the two timelines synchronize briefly around that particular configuration of events, you feel it. That's the déjà vu. Not a timing error in your brain, but a resonance between realities, a moment when this timeline passes through, the same point that another timeline passed through earlier, and your consciousness recognizes the overlap. This would explain why déjà vu feels so specific, so precise. It's not vague familiarity, it's actual recognition of an actual memory, just a memory from a different timeline that your consciousness happened to access during sleep. The dream wasn't prediction, it was experience, just experience of a moment from somewhere else that would eventually occur here as well, in nearly identical form. It would also explain the eerie certainty that sometimes accompanies déjà vu, the feeling of knowing what comes next. Because you do know, you've experienced it before in another reality. The knowledge isn't logical or verbal, it's more like muscle memory, like your consciousness remembering how this moment unfolds because it already witnessed the unfolding elsewhere. Some researchers studying déjà vu have noted that it often occurs during times of stress, fatigue, or when traveling to new places. These are conditions where your normal mental state is disrupted, where your consciousness might be less rigidly anchored to this particular timeline. Perhaps those disruptions create temporary cracks, moments where the boundaries between parallel realities become thin enough for memories to bleed through, for experiences from elsewhere to brush against your awareness. Traveling to a new place, you might experience déjà vu because in another timeline you've been there before. Different choices led you to visit earlier, or to live there, or simply to pass through at a different point in your life. When you arrive in this timeline, your consciousness recognizes the place from that other experience, creating the impossible sensation of having been somewhere you know you've never been. Meeting someone new, you might feel inexplicably familiar with them, as if you've known them for years. Perhaps in another timeline you have. Perhaps in a reality where your paths crossed earlier, or under different circumstances, you developed a relationship, and some echo of that connection persists when you meet them here for what feels like but isn't quite the first time. These experiences hover at the edge of what we can rationally explain. They're too common to dismiss entirely, too specific to be simple mistakes, too strange to fit comfortably into our usual frameworks for understanding memory and time. And while the conventional explanations account for some aspects of them, they leave something out, some quality of the experience that resists reduction to neural misfiring or coincidence. Perhaps what they leave out is the possibility that consciousness isn't confined to experiencing one timeline at a time. Perhaps memory isn't limited to storing events that happened in this reality. Perhaps the boundaries between parallel timelines are permeable enough that experiences can slip across, leaving traces, creating moments of impossible recognition when two realities briefly align. If that's true, then déjà vu isn't a glitch, it's a glimpse, a momentary awareness of the larger landscape of reality, the multiplicity of timelines, the other lives you're living in other versions of now. And dreams are the nightly journeys through that landscape, the extended explorations that déjà vu only hints at in fleeting seconds of waking confusion. Dreams are rarely solitary experiences. Most of them, especially the vivid narrative ones that linger in memory after waking, contain other people. Sometimes they're people you know, friends or family members or colleagues who appear and interact with you in ways that feel natural and appropriate. Other times they're strangers, individuals you've never seen before, with distinct faces and personalities and ways of moving through the world. And occasionally they're people you recognize from waking life, but who seem different somehow, often in ways you can't quite articulate, as if they're the same person, but filtered through a slightly altered lens. The standard explanation for dream people is straightforward. They're constructions of your own mind, puppets animated by your subconscious, characters in a play written and directed by various parts of your brain while you sleep. When you dream about your mother or your best friend, you're creating a simulation of them based on your memories and expectations. When you dream about strangers, your brain is generating faces from fragments of people you've glimpsed in passing, composite characters assembled from bits of visual memory you didn't consciously notice or retain. This makes sense logically. Your brain has stored vast amounts of information about people, their appearances, their mannerisms, their likely responses to situations. It can draw on this database to populate dreams with characters that behave in believable ways. The fact that dream people seem autonomous, seem to have their own thoughts and motivations, is just an illusion created by different parts of your brain operating in parallel, generating responses that your conscious mind experiences as coming from external sources. But if you pay close attention to your experience of dream people, if you recall interactions carefully, something about this explanation feels incomplete, because dream people often do things you wouldn't expect. They say things you wouldn't have thought to have them say. They surprise you, challenge you, reveal information you didn't consciously possess. They act with an agency that's difficult to reconcile with the idea that you're controlling them, even unconsciously. Think about conversations in dreams. They flow naturally, with the give and take of real dialogue. The other person responds to what you say in ways that make sense but aren't predictable. They have their own concerns, their own points they want to make, their own emotional reactions. The conversation unfolds dynamically, going directions you didn't plan, arriving at conclusions you didn't anticipate. For all of this to be your brain talking to itself, it requires an impressive degree of compartmentalization, with different regions generating content in real time that other regions experience as genuinely surprising. And sometimes dream people possess knowledge you don't have. They tell you things, offer insights, reveal perspectives that feel genuinely new. When you wake up and reflect on what they said, you realize it's information you couldn't have generated on your own, or at least wouldn't have thought to generate. It's as if the dream person had access to their own understanding, their own wisdom, independent of yours. This is particularly striking with strangers in dreams. You meet someone you've never seen before, and they have a complete presence. Their face is detailed, specific, memorable. Their personality is coherent and consistent throughout the dream. They behave like whole people with histories and motivations and inner lives, not like flat characters or symbolic representations. And the sheer number of strangers that can appear across a lifetime of dreams is staggering. Your brain would have to be inventing thousands of unique individuals, each one rendered in enough detail to feel real while you're interacting with them. Some people report dreaming about the same strangers repeatedly, developing relationships with dream people they never encounter in waking life. These individuals appear in multiple dreams over months or years, showing up consistently, continuing conversations from previous dreams, exhibiting growth and change across the span of dream encounters. They have names, preferences, ongoing concerns. They exist as presences in dream life the way friends exist in waking life. If dreams are alternate realities, if your consciousness is visiting parallel timelines during sleep, then dream people aren't constructions at all. They're actual people. When you dream about your mother, you're interacting with a version of her that exists in another timeline, a version shaped by slightly different experiences, different choices, different circumstances. She's recognizably your mother, the same essential person, but filtered through a different life path, a different accumulation of moments. This would explain why dream people sometimes act out of character. It's not that your memory of them is inaccurate, it's that this version of them genuinely is different. They made different choices, developed different habits, hold different beliefs because their life unfolded differently. The strangeness you feel isn't error, it's recognition of genuine divergence between the version you know here and the version you're encountering there. And the strangers in your dreams might not be strangers at all, at least not in every timeline. They're people you know in other realities, people whose paths crossed yours under different circumstances, people who play significant roles in lives you're living elsewhere. When you dream about them, you're accessing those relationships, those connections that exist in parallel but not here. They feel complete and autonomous because they are. They're real consciousnesses inhabiting their own experiences, and your consciousness is briefly intersecting with theirs. This would make dreams a form of contact, a meeting place where consciousnesses from different timelines can interact, share experiences, communicate across the boundaries that separate parallel realities. The conversations you have in dreams aren't monologues, they're actual exchanges, genuine communication between versions of people existing in different configurations of possibility. Some spiritual traditions have long held that dreams are spaces where souls meet, where the boundaries between individuals thin and connection becomes more direct than it is in waking life. Ancient cultures spoke of dream communication, of messages passed between people during sleep, of shared dream spaces where multiple dreamers could encounter each other. Modern psychology dismissed these ideas as superstition, as misunderstandings of how the brain works. But perhaps those traditions were recognizing something real, something we've lost sight of in our rush to reduce everything to neural mechanisms. There's a persistent phenomenon called mutual dreaming, where two people report having very similar or even identical dreams on the same night. They wake up and share their dreams with each other, only to discover striking parallels in content, characters, settings, or events. Skeptics explain this as coincidence, selective memory, or unconscious influence from shared experiences and conversations. But the reports continue, across cultures and eras too consistent to dismiss entirely. If consciousness can move between timelines during sleep, if dreams are actual experiences in parallel realities, their mutual dreaming makes perfect sense. Two consciousnesses from this reality encounter each other in another reality, where their relationship or circumstances bring them together in ways that don't happen here. They share a dream not because their brains coincidentally generated similar content, but because they were genuinely in the same place, experiencing the same events from different perspectives. The people in your dreams, then, are real. Not hallucinations, not projections, but actual consciousnesses you're meeting in the spaces where timelines intersect, where parallel realities brush against each other, where the boundaries between what is and what might have been become permeable enough for contact to occur. Throughout history, people have reported dreams that seem to predict the future. Not vague, symbolic dreams open to interpretation, but specific, detailed dreams about events that later occurred exactly as dreamed. Abraham Lincoln reportedly dreamed of his own assassination days before it happened. Mark Twain dreamed of his brother's death in precise detail, including the funeral arrangements weeks before the tragedy. Countless ordinary people have woken from dreams about phone calls, accidents, or encounters that then happened within days or hours, sometimes exactly as dreamed. The scientific establishment is understandably skeptical of such claims. Precognition violates our understanding of causality. Effects cannot precede causes, information cannot travel backward through time, and human memory is notoriously unreliable, especially when it comes to dreams. We remember them selectively, often reconstructing them after the fact, unconsciously shaping them to fit what actually happened. The mind is very good at finding patterns, at seeing connections that aren't there, at transforming vague impressions into specific memories once we have the benefit of hindsight. All of this is true. Most claimed prophetic dreams probably are coincidence, confabulation, or the brain's tendency to forget misses and remember hits. Out of thousands of dreams across a lifetime, a few are bound to superficially resemble later events purely by chance. And if you dream about disasters, deaths, or dramatic events with any regularity, eventually reality will catch up with one of those dreams, creating the appearance of prediction when it's really just statistics. But statistics don't account for everything. There are cases, well documented and carefully investigated, where the specificity of the dream and the precision of its match to later events strain the limits of coincidence, where multiple details align, where the timing is unnervingly close, where the dreamer reported the dream to others before the event occurred, providing verification that the memory wasn't constructed afterward. One of the most famous documented cases involved a disaster in the Welsh village of Aberfan in 1966. A coal waste tip collapsed, sliding down a mountainside and engulfing a school, killing 144 people, mostly children. In the weeks before the disaster, several people, including some of the children who died, reported dreams about something terrible happening to the school, about being unable to breathe, about darkness and suffocation. One child told her mother she dreamed she went to school, and the school wasn't there, that something black had come down over it. The next day she died in the collapse. These weren't analysed or interpreted as prophetic until after the event, but they were reported beforehand, witnessed by others, specific enough in their imagery to be chilling in retrospect. Coincidence? Perhaps. The mind's tendency to impose meaning on random patterns? Possibly. But the precision troubles easy dismissal, invites consideration of alternatives, even uncomfortable ones. If dreams are visits to parallel realities, then prophetic dreams might not be predictions at all. They might be memories of events that have already happened in timelines that are slightly ahead of this one. In the vast landscape of parallel universes, some timelines progress faster than others, or perhaps they're simply offset in time, running parallel but not perfectly synchronized. When your consciousness visits one of these head-running timelines during sleep, you experience events that, from your perspective, haven't happened yet, but, from that timeline's perspective, have already occurred. The Aberfan collapse happened in that timeline days or weeks before it happened here. The children who dreamed of it were experiencing fragments of their deaths in those other timelines, their consciousness briefly accessing moments from lives that were about to end in very similar circumstances across multiple parallel realities. When they woke, they retained dim, disturbing impressions of suffocation and darkness, impressions their waking minds couldn't contextualize until the event occurred here as well. This interpretation doesn't require information to travel backward in time. It only requires consciousness to be able to access experiences from timelines that are temporally offset from this one. The dreams aren't predicting the future. They're remembering events that have already happened, just not here yet. And because most major events, especially disasters, probably occur similarly across many parallel timelines, the likelihood of your consciousness encountering them in an ahead-running timeline before they occur here increases. This would explain why prophetic dreams are often about significant events rather than trivial ones. Disasters, deaths, major life changes, these are the kinds of events that happen consistently across multiple timelines, creating strong signals that consciousness can detect when it's wandering during sleep. Trivial events, what you'll eat for breakfast or where you'll park your car, vary wildly across timelines, creating weak, inconsistent signals that are less likely to register as coherent memories. It would also explain why prophetic dreams are relatively rare. Most timelines probably run roughly synchronized with this one. The offset is usually too small to create noticeable prophetic content, but occasionally you access a timeline that's further ahead, or one where a significant event happened to occur earlier, and the temporal displacement becomes large enough for the dream to feel genuinely predictive when the event occurs here. And it would explain why the prophecy isn't perfect, why dream predictions often capture the essence of an event but miss details, or why the event happens but not exactly as dreamed. Because you're not seeing this timeline's future. You're experiencing another timeline's present or past, and while that timeline is similar enough that major events overlap, the specifics differ. The core event occurs in both places, but the details, the exact circumstances, the minor variations, those can diverge. Some traditions distinguish between different types of prophetic dreams. Some are warnings, chances to change outcomes. Others are simply visions of what will be, unchangeable, fixed. If dreams access parallel timelines, this distinction makes sense. Some events might occur across virtually all timelines. Deterministic outcomes that emerge from initial conditions in ways that can't easily be avoided. Others might be more contingent, happening in some timelines, but not others depending on specific choices and chances. Dreams that access the first type feel inevitable. Dreams that access the second type feel like possibilities that might or might not manifest here. The question of free will complicates this. If you dream of an event before it happens, and then it happens as dreamed, does that mean it was fated? That you had no choice? Or does it mean you dreamed a timeline where you made certain choices and then made those same choices here, either because the circumstances naturally led that direction, or because the dream influenced your waking decisions in ways that steered toward the dreamed outcome? There are no easy answers. But the phenomenon persists. People continue to have dreams that later prove eerily accurate. They continue to wake with knowledge of events they shouldn't possess yet. And while skepticism is warranted, while most such claims probably don't hold up to scrutiny, the residue of cases that do remain intriguing, suggestive, pointing towards something more complex than simple coincidence or faulty memory. The idea that two people could share a dream, experiencing the same events from different perspectives while asleep in separate locations, seems impossible by conventional understanding. Dreams are private, internal, generated by individual brains processing their own unique content. There's no mechanism for one person's dream to connect with another's, no way for consciousnesses to meet in some shared mental space outside physical reality. And yet the reports persist. Partners sometimes wake and discover they dreamed of each other in similar settings, engaged in the same activities. Siblings separated by distance report dreaming of their childhood home on the same night, wandering the same rooms, sometimes even interacting with each other in the dream. Friends describe dreaming together, having conversations or adventures, and discovering upon comparison that their accounts align in surprising ways. The details match, the sequence of events corresponds, the emotional content resonates. Skeptics point to the obvious explanation. These are coincidences amplified by selective attention and unconscious collaboration. The dreamers share so much context, so many memories and experiences, that their brains naturally generate similar content. When they compare notes, they unconsciously emphasize similarities and downplay differences. The matching details are remembered and celebrated, while the non-matching details are forgotten or rationalized away. The whole phenomenon is a combination of chance, shared history, and the human tendency to find patterns. This explanation accounts for many cases. People who spend significant time together do think along similar lines. Their brains process shared experiences, develop similar associations, generate related imagery. That some of their dreams would overlap in content is not particularly surprising. And memory is malleable enough that the act of comparing dreams could itself create false memories of alignment, each person subtly adjusting their recollection to match the other's account. But some reports describe shared dreams between people who haven't seen each other in years, who don't regularly communicate, who have no obvious reason to be generating synchronized dream content. They wake on the same morning in different cities or countries and independently record dreams that, when later compared, align in specific, unusual ways. Not just general themes, but particular details, specific sequences, identifying features that shouldn't appear in both accounts unless something more than coincidence is occurring. There are also reports from groups, particularly close-knit communities or spiritual groups that practice dream work, of multiple people experiencing connected dreams on the same night. They gather to share their dreams and discover threads running through them, characters appearing in multiple dreams, locations visited by different dreamers, events witnessed from various perspectives. The individual dreams, taken separately, seem personal and private, but when laid side by side they reveal patterns, connections, a larger narrative that no single dreamer could have known. Indigenous cultures often speak of dreamtime as a shared space, a realm where individual consciousnesses can meet and interact outside the constraints of physical distance. Australian Aboriginal traditions describe the dreaming as both a spiritual dimension and a time beyond time, where ancestors and living people and future generations exist simultaneously, where stories and knowledge are transmitted, where the boundaries between individual and collective dissolve. Many other traditions have similar concepts, suggesting that the idea of shared dream space is ancient, cross-cultural, persistent. Modern psychology dismisses these as metaphorical frameworks, poetic ways of talking about internal processes that don't actually involve any external connection. But what if the traditions are describing something real? Something that doesn't fit neatly into our current scientific paradigms but exists nonetheless? If consciousness can access parallel realities during sleep, if your awareness isn't confined to your individual brain but can expand into other timelines and other perspectives, then shared dreaming becomes theoretically possible. Two people sleeping in this reality might both access the same parallel reality, experiencing events there from their own perspectives but within the same environment, the same situation. When they wake and compare notes, they're describing the same experience from different angles, like two people recounting what they saw at the same party or in the same location. In a parallel reality, you and your partner might be together in circumstances that differ from your waking life here. You're interacting, sharing space, engaged in activities. During sleep, both your consciousnesses access that reality and experience that interaction. You wake with memories of being together, of talking or traveling, or simply existing in proximity. When you share your dreams, you discover they align because they're memories of the same events, just filtered through your individual perspectives and translated imperfectly into the language of waking recall. This wouldn't happen every night or with every dream. Most of the time, consciousness wanders independently, visiting different timelines, experiencing different fragments of parallel lives. But occasionally, perhaps when emotional connection is strong, or when the circumstances in a parallel reality happen to bring both consciousnesses to the same place at the same time the overlap occurs, you share the dream not because your brains coincidentally generated matching content, but because you were genuinely together, experiencing something real in a reality adjacent to this one. Some researchers studying consciousness have proposed that minds might be capable of a kind of entanglement, analogous to quantum entanglement where particles remain connected across distance in ways that seem to violate locality. If consciousness has quantum properties, if it's not entirely reducible to classical physics, then perhaps two closely connected consciousnesses can remain entangled, influencing each other, sharing information even when physically separated. During sleep, when the normal barriers and filters of waking consciousness relax, this entanglement might become more apparent, manifesting as shared dream experiences. This is highly speculative, far beyond what current science can demonstrate, but it's not entirely without foundation. Studies of consciousness, meditation, and altered states continue to reveal surprising phenomena that don't fit neatly into mechanistic frameworks. The hard problem of consciousness remains unsolved, and the reports of shared dreaming, while anecdotal, are numerous enough and consistent enough to warrant consideration beyond simple dismissal. There's also the phenomenon of archetypal dreams, dreams that seem to tap into universal themes and imagery that transcend individual experience. Carl Jung proposed the concept of the collective unconscious, a shared repository of symbols and patterns inherited across humanity, accessible in dreams and creative states. People across cultures and eras dream of similar images: fall, flight, pursuit, being naked in public, meeting shadow figures, encountering wise old figures or divine beings. These recurring patterns suggest something shared beneath individual consciousness, some common substrate that influences dream content. If parallel realities exist in infinite variation, perhaps some realities or some aspects of consciousness are more universal, more widely shared across timelines. Perhaps certain archetypal experiences occur so consistently across so many versions of human existence that they create strong resonances, easy access points that consciousness naturally gravitates toward during sleep. When you dream archetypal content, you're not just processing personal psychology, you're touching something larger, something collective, something that exists as a kind of shared human experience across the multiverse. There's a particular type of dream that stands apart from ordinary dreaming, a state where you become suddenly, clearly aware that you're dreaming while the dream continues around you. This is lucid dreaming, and it's one of the most fascinating phenomena in the study of sleep and consciousness. In a lucid dream, you retain rational thought, self-awareness, and often the ability to make conscious decisions about what you do within the dream. You know you're asleep, you know what you're experiencing isn't physically real, and yet the experience continues, vivid and immersive and responsive to your intentions. Lucid dreamers report extraordinary experiences. They can fly by simply deciding to fly. They can walk through walls, summon objects or people, change the scenery around them, engage in conversations with dream characters while fully aware those characters are part of a dream. The level of control varies. Some lucid dreams offer nearly complete freedom, the ability to reshape reality at will. Others allow awareness without much control. You know you're dreaming, but the dream continues on its own trajectory, resistant to your attempts to alter it. This resistance is interesting. If dreams are entirely your own creation, hallucinations generated by your sleeping brain with no external reference, then why would lucid dreams have any resistance at all? Once you become aware that you're dreaming, that everything around you is your own mental construction, shouldn't you have complete control? Your lucid mind should be able to reshape the dream instantly, effortlessly, because there's nothing there except what your brain is creating moment to moment. But that's not what happens. Experienced lucid dreamers describe a kind of inertia in dreams, a sense that the dream world has its own momentum, its own structure that doesn't simply collapse or transform because you've become aware. You can influence it, sometimes dramatically, but there's often pushback. The environment resists sudden changes. Dream characters continue to act autonomously, even when you're aware they're part of your dream. The laws of the dream, whatever they happen to be in that particular dream, maintain a kind of consistency that you have to work within or against. Some lucid dreamers report feeling like they're in a real place that exists independently of their awareness. The dream world feels solid, coherent, governed by rules. When they try to manipulate it, they encounter limitations. Flying might require effort, concentration. Changing the environment might only work partially. Summoning specific people or objects might fail, or produce unexpected results. It's as if the dream has a reality of its own that doesn't entirely bend to conscious will. This makes more sense if dreams are visits to alternate realities rather than pure hallucinations. If you're experiencing a parallel timeline during sleep, then that reality has its own physics, its own constraints, its own objective existence. Becoming lucid within it doesn't give you unlimited power to reshape it any more than becoming thoughtful and self-aware in waking life gives you the power to violate the laws of physics here. You're still operating within a framework that exists independently of your consciousness. The degree of control you have in a lucid dream might correlate with how much your consciousness is influencing that particular reality versus simply observing it. In some parallel timelines, perhaps your version there is more malleable, more responsive to the consciousness accessing it from here. In others, that version is more fixed, more autonomous, living their life according to their own choices and circumstances. When you become lucid in those dreams, You're aware but not necessarily in control because you're not really the one living that moment. You're visiting it, witnessing it, perhaps influencing it slightly, but not creating it wholesale. Flying in lucid dreams might work because in some parallel realities, the physics actually allows for flight, or because the version of you there has abilities you don't have here. Walking through walls might succeed when you access a reality where matter is more permeable, or where consciousness has greater direct influence over physical form. The variations in what's possible from lucid dream to lucid dream might reflect variations in the nature of the parallel realities you're accessing, rather than variations in your brain's willingness to comply with your conscious intentions. There's also the phenomenon of false awakenings within lucid dreams. You become aware you're dreaming, you decide to wake up, and you do wake up into your bedroom, in your bed. Everything seems normal. You get up, start your day, and then suddenly realize you're still dreaming. The awakening was false, a dream of waking up. This can happen multiple times in succession, layers of false awakening, each one feeling completely real until you discover it isn't. This layering suggests that consciousness isn't simply in one state or another, dreaming or awake. It suggests multiple levels, multiple realities that can be nested or adjacent, with consciousness capable of moving between them. Each false awakening might be a transition to a reality closer to this one but not quite this one, a progressive journey through parallel timelines that are increasingly similar to your waking reality until you finally arrive back here. Some lucid dreamers cultivate the skill deliberately, training themselves to recognize when they're dreaming through reality checks and mental habits. They practice maintaining awareness during the transition from waking to sleeping, catching the moment when consciousness shifts from anchored to fluid. The techniques work, suggesting that lucidity is a learnable skill, something consciousness can be trained to do. But what exactly is being trained? Is it just metacognition, the brain learning to monitor its own states? Or is it consciousness learning to remain aware and intentional while traveling between realities? In certain meditative traditions, particularly Tibetan dream yoga, lucid dreaming is considered a spiritual practice. The goal isn't entertainment or wish fulfillment, but exploration of the nature of consciousness and reality. Practitioners use lucid dreams to investigate questions like, what is awareness? Where is the boundary between self and other? What persists across different states of consciousness? They treat dream reality as equally valid as waking reality for the purposes of understanding, a laboratory for exploring how consciousness relates to the appearances it experiences. These traditions suggest that lucid dreaming can reveal something fundamental about existence, something that applies not just to dreams but to waking life as well. If you can become aware within a dream that you're dreaming, the practice asks, what prevents you from becoming aware within waking life that you're, in some sense, also dreaming? That this reality, solid as it feels, might also be one possible expression of consciousness among many, one timeline among countless others. The relationship between control and awareness in lucid dreams might be teaching us something about the relationship between consciousness and reality more broadly. We have some influence, some ability to shape our experience through intention and action, but we're not omnipotent. We operate within structures, laws, context that exist independently of our will. The dream world resists complete control not because our brain won't cooperate, but because we're interacting with something real, something that has its own existence, its own integrity, its own nature that we participate in but don't entirely create. Time in dreams doesn't work the way it does in waking life. You've probably noticed this. A dream can feel like it lasts for hours, yet when you wake and check the clock, only 20 minutes have passed. Or the reverse happens. A brief dream, seemingly seconds long, occupies an entire REM cycle. The subjective experience of duration bears little relationship to the objective passage of time measured in the waking world. This temporal fluidity is one of the strangest aspects of dreaming. In waking life, time feels consistent, regular, flowing at a steady rate from past through present into future. Clocks tick at predictable intervals. Events unfold in sequence. Cause precedes effect. But in dreams, all of this becomes negotiable. You can experience years of dream life in a single night. You can move backward and forward through time without transition. You can be a child in one moment and your current age in the next, or experience events out of order, or revisit the past with awareness of the future. Neuroscience explains this as a quirk of how the brain processes information during sleep. Without external time cues, without the regular input of sensory data tied to the physical world's timeline, the brain constructs its own sense of duration. Memory consolidation and emotional processing don't follow linear time. The brain can review a lifetime of experiences in minutes, or spend extended periods on a single moment, expanding or compressing subjective duration according to its own internal logic. This explanation describes the mechanism but doesn't fully address the experience, because time in dreams doesn't just feel compressed or expanded. It feels different in quality, as if the rules governing its flow have fundamentally changed. And this difference might tell us something about the nature of time itself, and how consciousness relates to it. In physics, particularly in Einstein's theory of relativity, time isn't the fixed universal constant we experience in daily life. It's relative, flexible, dependent on motion and gravity. Time passes at different rates in different reference frames. Someone moving at high speed experiences time more slowly than someone standing still. Someone in a strong gravitational field experiences time more slowly than someone in weak gravity. These aren't illusions or perceptual tricks. They're actual differences in how time flows, measurable, predictable, fundamentally woven into the structure of space-time. The universe doesn't have a single universal clock. Different locations, different conditions, different perspectives experience time differently. And if time is this flexible in physical reality, perhaps consciousness, when it's not tightly anchored to a specific body in a specific location, experiences time even more flexibly. Perhaps during sleep, when consciousness loosens its grip on this particular timeline, it's no longer bound to experience time the way this body, this brain, this physical system measures it. When you dream, your consciousness might be accessing moments from parallel realities that exist at different points in time relative to this one, not just slightly ahead or behind, but substantially offset. You might experience a day from a parallel timeline where events that are years in your future here have already occurred, or you might visit a timeline where you're younger, reliving moments from a past that's still present there. From your consciousness's perspective, moving between these timelines, linear time breaks down. You're not moving forward through one timeline. You're moving laterally across many timelines, each at its own temporal position, creating the sensation of time being fluid, non-linear, dreamlike. This could explain why dream narratives often feel compressed or expanded. You're not experiencing time compressed. You're experiencing multiple moments from multiple timelines, and your waking mind, trying to make sense of it, interprets the sequence as taking more or less time than it objectively did from the perspective of your sleeping body. The dream felt like hours because you experienced many moments from many timelines. The dream felt like seconds because you experienced only fragments, brief touches of other realities before moving on. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that all possible outcomes of all quantum events exist simultaneously in different branches of reality. But simultaneously is a tricky word. Simultaneous relative to what? If different branches can have different temporal relationships to each other, if time isn't synchronized across the multiverse, then the landscape of parallel realities is not just spatial but temporal. Some timelines run ahead, some lag behind, some might loop or branch in ways that create complex temporal relationships impossible to visualize from our linear perspective. Consciousness, freed from the constraints of experiencing time through a physical body in a single timeline, might navigate this landscape with a kind of temporal fluidity. During sleep, you're not bound to the forward flow of time as experienced here. You can access pasts that are still present in other timelines, futures that have already occurred elsewhere, alternative presents running parallel to this one. The result is the dreamlike quality of temporal non-linearity, the sense that time is happening all at once or not happening at all, that past and future and present are permeable categories rather than fixed realities. Some dreams have a prophetic quality, not because they're showing you this timeline's future, but because they're showing you a timeline where more time has elapsed, where events have progressed further. Some dreams have a nostalgic quality not because you're remembering your past, but because you're experiencing a timeline where less time has elapsed, where you're younger, where the past is still present. And some dreams feel utterly timeless, existing in an eternal now, because you're accessing a moment that somehow exists outside the normal flow of time altogether, a kind of temporal intersection point where multiple timelines converge. This perspective suggests that consciousness isn't inherently bound to linear time. It can experience time that way, does experience it that way while anchored to a physical body in a specific timeline. But that's a constraint of embodiment, not a fundamental limitation of consciousness itself. When the anchor loosens, when sleep allows consciousness to drift, it reverts to a more natural state, one where time is navigable rather than inevitable, where past and future are destinations rather than fixed categories. This doesn't mean time doesn't exist or doesn't matter. It means time is more complex than our daily experience suggests. The physicist Carlo Rovelli has written about time as an emergent property, something that arises from particular perspectives rather than existing as an absolute feature of reality. From the universe's perspective, if such a thing makes sense, there might be no time at all. Just a vast landscape of events in complex relationship to each other. Time, as we experience it, is how consciousness moves through that landscape, the path we trace, the sequence we experience. If consciousness can take different paths through the landscape, can access different sequences, different relationships between events, then it can experience time differently. And dreams might be exactly that. Consciousness exploring alternative paths, experiencing the landscape from different angles, visiting points that appear as past or future from one perspective, but are simply there, present and accessible from another. There's something you can't do when you wake from a dream. You can't bring anything back with you, no matter how vivid the dream, no matter how real the objects you held or the places you visited. Nothing physical crosses the boundary between sleeping and waking. You might dream of finding a precious jewel, holding it in your hand, feeling its weight and texture. But when you wake, your hand is empty. The jewel doesn't exist in this reality. It never did, at least not here. This is one of the clearest distinctions between dreams and waking life. Waking reality has persistence. Objects remain where you leave them. Actions have consequences that carry forward. The world continues whether you're paying attention to it or not. But dream reality, for all its vividness and detail while you're experiencing it, doesn't follow you back. It stays wherever it is, inaccessible once you wake, leaving only memory behind. The standard explanation is obvious. Dreams aren't real, so of course you can't bring dream objects into waking life. They're hallucinations, mental constructs with no physical existence. They appear in your mind during sleep and dissolve when you wake, because there were never anything more than neural activity, patterns of firing neurons that created the subjective experience of seeing and touching objects that weren't actually there. But if dreams are visits to alternate realities, if you're actually experiencing parallel timelines during sleep, then the consistency problem becomes more interesting. You're experiencing real objects in real places, just not in this reality. When you wake, you return to this reality, and obviously the objects from there can't come with you. The boundary between realities is more fundamental than the boundary between rooms or even between planets. It's a separation between entire timelines, entire configurations of matter and energy, entire self-contained systems of existence. Think about what it would mean if you could bring something back. If you woke holding an object from a dream, that object would have to somehow transition between realities, moving from one timeline's matter-energy configuration into another's. This would violate every conservation law we know. Matter can't be created or destroyed within a closed system, and each reality presumably is a closed system. Objects can move within a timeline, but crossing between timelines would require a kind of transfer that physics, at least as we currently understand it, doesn't permit. The fact that you can't bring objects back, then, doesn't disprove the alternate reality theory of dreams. It actually supports it, or at least is consistent with it. If timelines are truly separate, if each reality maintains its own integrity, then of course nothing physical crosses between them. The boundary is absolute, at least for matter and energy. Only consciousness, which might not be reducible to matter and energy, can cross. And consciousness, being non-physical or differently physical, can't carry physical objects with it. But consciousness can carry information. You wake from dreams with memories, with impressions, sometimes with insights or knowledge you didn't have before. Information crosses the boundary even when matter cannot. And this creates interesting possibilities. If you can remember experiences from alternate realities, if those memories can influence your thoughts and decisions here, then information from other timelines is affecting this one, even though objects and matter remain separate. Some people report waking from dreams with solutions to problems they'd been struggling with, or with creative ideas they hadn't consciously considered. The classic example is Dmitri Mendeleev, who reportedly dreamed the periodic table of elements in its correct arrangement, solving a puzzle he'd been working on for years. When he woke, he wrote it down, and it became the foundation of modern chemistry. Whether the story is literally true or somewhat embellished, it represents a common experience, the sense that sleep and dreams can provide access to knowledge or understanding that wasn't available to waking consciousness. If dreams are just the brain sorting through existing information, then dream insights are simply your subconscious mind working on problems while you sleep, making connections your conscious mind hadn't noticed. This happens, certainly. But if dreams also involve experiencing other realities, then some insights might come from accessing knowledge that exists elsewhere, in timelines where different discoveries were made, different connections noticed, different solutions found. Your consciousness brings back information from those timelines, and your waking mind interprets it as sudden inspiration or intuitive understanding. The boundary, then, is selectively permeable. Physical objects cannot cross, maintaining the integrity and independence of each timeline. But information, being more abstract, more fundamentally tied to consciousness than to matter, can cross. And this makes sense from a physics perspective. Information is strange. It's physical in that it requires physical substrate to exist, but it's not itself matter or energy. It's pattern, relationship, organization. And pattern might be able to exist across timelines in ways that specific material instantiations cannot. There's also the question of why consciousness can cross when matter cannot. If consciousness emerges from brain activity, if it's entirely dependent on physical neurons and chemical reactions, then it should be as bound to a single timeline as any other physical system. But if consciousness is more fundamental, if it's a property of reality that brains tune into rather than generate, then perhaps it exists at a level where the boundaries between timelines are less absolute. Consciousness might be the one thing that's genuinely shared across the multiverse, the common element that experiences different realities from different perspectives, but is itself not confined to any single one. This would make consciousness the bridge, the connection point between otherwise isolated realities. During waking life, it's focused through a particular brain in a particular timeline, experiencing that reality exclusively. During sleep, the focus softens, the anchor loosens, and consciousness expands to touch other timelines, other brains, other versions of experience. But it always returns. The anchor pulls it back. The focusing mechanism of your particular brain in this particular timeline reasserts itself, and you wake here, in this reality, with only memories of where you've been. The consistency problem, rather than being evidence against the alternate reality theory of dreams, might actually be one of its strongest supports. The fact that dreams feel completely real while you're in them, but leave nothing physical behind when you wake, is exactly what you'd expect if you were genuinely visiting other realities that remain separate and intact. The experience is real, the places and people and events are real, but they belong to a different timeline's matter-energy system, and that system doesn't merge with this one. You visit, you experience, you return, and nothing but memory makes the crossing. Every animal sleeps, or does something so similar to sleep that the distinction becomes semantic. Mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, fish, even insects, all have periods where their activity levels drop, their responsiveness to stimuli decreases, and their brain states, when measurable, show patterns distinct from waking consciousness. Sleep is universal among creatures with nervous systems complex enough to have something we might call consciousness. And this universality is strange when you consider the cost. Sleep is expensive from an evolutionary perspective. An animal that sleeps is vulnerable. It can't hunt or forage. It can't watch for predators. It can't reproduce or defend territory, or engage in any of the activities that contribute to survival and genetic success. For many species, sleep is the most dangerous part of their day, the time when they're most likely to be killed or injured. And yet evolution hasn't eliminated it. Every species that needs sleep still sleeps, despite millions of years of selective pressure that should have favored any mutation that reduced or removed the need. This suggests sleep serves a function so essential that the survival cost is worth paying. The standard explanation focuses on physical restoration. The body repairs tissue, processes toxins, consolidates immune function. The brain clears waste products, strengthens important neural connections, weakens unimportant ones, transfers information from short-term to long-term memory. These are real, measurable functions that happen during sleep. They're important, probably essential for health and cognitive function. But are they important enough to justify the vulnerability? Some scientists think so. Others suspect there's something more, something we haven't fully identified yet, that makes sleep not just useful but absolutely necessary. And the fact that dreaming accompanies sleep, particularly REM sleep with its vivid, narrative-rich dreams, suggests that whatever sleep does goes beyond simple physical maintenance, because dreaming itself is metabolically expensive. Your brain during REM sleep uses almost as much energy as it does during waking. If sleep were purely about rest and repair, you'd expect minimal brain activity, conservation of resources. Instead, the brain becomes highly active, generating complex experiences, processing vast amounts of information, creating entire worlds with characters, narratives, and sensory detail. Why? What function does this serve that couldn't be accomplished more efficiently? One possibility is that dreaming serves purely psychological functions. It processes emotions, works through conflicts, helps integrate difficult experiences. It provides a safe space to rehearse responses to threats, to explore social situations, to practice skills without real-world consequences. These are valuable functions, and research supports that dreaming contributes to emotional regulation and learning. But there's something about this explanation that feels incomplete, especially when you consider that not just humans but many mammals experience REM sleep, and presumably something like dreaming. Are dogs processing complex emotions? Are cats rehearsing social situations? Perhaps. Their inner lives might be richer than we typically assume, but the universality of a REM sleep across species with vastly different cognitive capacities suggests the function might be more fundamental than psychological processing. What if sleep serves a function related to consciousness itself rather than to the brain or body? What if consciousness needs to return somewhere, to reconnect with something, to perform a kind of maintenance or synchronization that can only happen when it's not tightly focused through waking awareness? If consciousness is fundamental rather than emergent, if it exists independently of any particular brain, then perhaps sleep is when consciousness checks in, updates, realigns with whatever larger system or structure it's part of. In this view, every conscious creature sleeps because every consciousness needs to periodically loosen its attachment to its particular embodiment and timeline. The brain and body need maintenance too, certainly, but that's secondary to or coincident with the deeper necessity. Consciousness can only stay focused in one reality for so long before it needs to expand, to touch other possibilities, to remember or reconnect with its larger nature. Sleep is when this happens, and dreaming is the subjective experience of consciousness moving through that expanded state. This would explain why sleep deprivation is so damaging, not just physically, but psychologically. Extended wakefulness doesn't just tire the body, it produces hallucinations, paranoia, cognitive breakdown, symptoms that look like consciousness itself is malfunctioning rather than just the brain being tired. If consciousness needs to periodically access other states or realities, and sleep is when it does that, then preventing sleep isn't just preventing rest. It's preventing consciousness from performing essential functions that can't be done while awake. It would also explain why dreaming is often so strange and non-linear. Consciousness during sleep isn't operating under the constraints of focused embodied awareness. It's not trying to maintain a coherent narrative or consistent identity or logical progression. It's moving through the landscape of parallel realities, touching moments and places and versions of experience according to some logic that doesn't translate well into waking categories. The strangeness of dreams isn't malfunction, It's consciousness operating in its natural, unfiltered state, experiencing reality without the focusing constraints that make waking life feel orderly and sequential. Young animals sleep more than adults. Human infants spend most of their time asleep, and much of that sleep is REM sleep. As we age, sleep requirements gradually decrease. This pattern appears across species. Why would the very young, who have so much to learn about the world, spend so much time unconscious? From a purely developmental perspective, it seems inefficient. But if consciousness needs more time in its expanded state while establishing its connection to a new body and timeline, if the anchoring process takes time and requires repeated journeys between focused and diffuse states, then extended sleep in infancy makes sense. Perhaps young consciousness is still learning how to focus, how to anchor itself firmly in this particular reality. The frequent transitions between sleeping and waking, the extended periods in REM sleep, are practice sessions, consciousness learning to navigate between its natural expanded state and the focused state required for embodied existence. As the skill develops, as the anchoring becomes more stable, less sleep is needed. The consciousness has learned how to maintain its focus in this timeline without needing to return to the expanded state as frequently. This is speculative, reaching beyond what science can currently demonstrate. But the universality of sleep, the consistency of its patterns across vastly different species, the absolute necessity of it despite obvious survival costs, all point towards something profound. Sleep isn't just maintenance, it's connection. It's consciousness performing functions that can't be performed while focused in waking awareness. Functions essential enough that evolution has preserved and protected sleep across every lineage where consciousness appears. There's a phenomenon reported across cultures throughout history, with remarkable consistency in its core features. People who come close to death, whose hearts stop or who suffer severe trauma, or who teeter on the edge between living and not living, sometimes report extraordinary experiences. They describe leaving their bodies, moving through darkness or tunnels, encountering deceased loved ones, experiencing profound peace or unconditional love, reviewing their entire lives in moments, and often, most strikingly, visiting places that feel more real than ordinary reality, more vivid, more substantial, more fundamentally true. These are near-death experiences, and they've been documented and studied extensively. Skeptics attribute them to oxygen deprivation, neurological stress responses, the brain's last desperate attempts to make sense of shutdown. Believers see them as evidence of an afterlife, proof that consciousness survives bodily death, glimpses of whatever lies beyond. Both perspectives have their adherents and their arguments, but there's another way to think about near-death experiences that connects to what we've been exploring about dreams and alternate realities. What if near-death experiences are similar to dreams, not in the sense of being hallucinations, but in the sense of being journeys through parallel realities? When consciousness loosens its grip on this timeline, whether through sleep or through approaching death, perhaps it moves through the same landscape, touches the same adjacent realities, experiences the same kind of fluid movement between different versions of existence. The difference is intensity and depth. Sleep allows brief, shallow visits. Near-death creates deeper, more sustained travel, consciousness moving further from its anchoring point, accessing realities more distant from this one. Many people who have near-death experiences report that it felt like lucid dreaming, but more so. They were aware, conscious, able to make choices and observe details, but the environment around them didn't follow the physics of waking reality. They could move through walls, travel instantly between locations, communicate without words. They experience time non-linearly, seeing their entire life at once, past and future somehow present simultaneously. These are all features common to dreams, particularly lucid dreams, but intensified, clarified, more coherent and memorable. The life review element is especially interesting. Many near-death experiencers describe watching their entire life unfold before them, not as passive observers, but as participants experiencing every moment again, often from multiple perspectives. They feel not just their own emotions, but the emotions of people they affected, experiencing directly how their actions impacted others. This isn't just memory. It's described as complete immersive re-experience of every moment simultaneously, as if their entire timeline is spread out and accessible all at once. If consciousness can access parallel realities, where events are temporally offset from this one, where different moments exist as present realities rather than past memories, then perhaps during near-death, consciousness accesses the entirety of its own timeline this way. It moves through all the moments of this particular life, not as memories but as actual experiences, visiting each point where its consciousness was focused in this reality. The review isn't the brain replaying memories. It's consciousness traveling through its own timeline, experiencing it from outside the normal forward flow of time. Some near-death experiencers report visiting alternate versions of their lives, seeing how things might have unfolded differently, witnessing choices not taken and their consequences. They describe this not as imagination, but as genuine observation of real possibilities, real timelines that branched from their own. If the many worlds interpretation is correct, if every choice creates splits, then these alternate lives actually exist. During near-death, consciousness might gain access to adjacent timelines where different versions of their life unfolded, experiencing directly the landscape of possibility that usually remains hidden. There's also the phenomenon of meeting deceased loved ones during near-death experiences. Skeptics argue these are wishful hallucinations, the brain comforting itself by conjuring familiar faces. But experiencers often report specific details, conversations, information they claim they couldn't have known, sometimes later verified by others, and they describe these encounters as feeling completely real, more real than waking interactions, the deceased loved ones appearing vital, autonomous, genuinely present rather than like memories or projections. If consciousness can move between realities, and if some aspect of consciousness persists after physical death, then perhaps deceased individuals exist in realities accessible when your consciousness travels during near death. Not heaven or hell in the traditional sense, but other timelines, other configurations of reality where consciousness continues in forms we don't yet understand. Meeting them during near death isn't hallucination, it's actual contact, consciousness to consciousness, in spaces where the boundaries between different realities thin. The tunnel or passage commonly reported in near-death experiences might represent the transition itself, the movement of consciousness from being tightly focused in this dying body to accessing the wider landscape of realities. The light at the end often described might be approaching a reality more distant from this one, a state or place where consciousness exists differently. The choice to return, which many experiencers describe being offered, might be consciousness deciding whether to re-anchor in this timeline or to continue moving into other forms of existence. What's striking is how often near-death experiences return fundamentally changed, not just psychologically, but in their basic understanding of reality. They lose fear of death, They describe feeling more connected to others, to the universe, to something larger than individual existence. They often report that the experience felt more real than ordinary life, that waking reality now seems somehow less substantial in comparison. These aren't typical responses to hallucinations. They suggest something profound was encountered, something that shifted their fundamental relationship to existence. Dreams and near-death experiences might be points on a spectrum, different degrees of consciousness loosening from its focused anchoring in this timeline. Light sleep, shallow wandering, deep sleep, more sustained travel, near death, profound journey into distant realities, and perhaps actual death, permanent transition, consciousness moving fully into other configurations of existence, no longer anchored to any single timeline but free to move through the landscape of possibilities in ways we can't imagine from our current perspective. This doesn't prove anything about afterlife or souls or any particular spiritual framework, but it suggests that the boundary between life and death might be less absolute than we typically assume. That consciousness might not be simply on or off, existing or not existing, but capable of different modes, different degrees of focus and diffusion, different relationships to the various realities that constitute the multiverse, and that what we call death might be less like ending and more like a different kind of travelling. Children dream differently than adults. Their dreams are often more fantastical, more emotionally intense, more story-like in structure. They report visits to impossible places, interactions with creatures that don't exist, adventures that span what feels like years, and they accept these experiences completely, without the skepticism or rational filtering that adults automatically apply. To a young child, the dream world and the waking world are both simply real, just different kinds of real, and the boundary between them is more permeable, more negotiable. This changes as they grow older. Gradually, children learn to distinguish dreams from waking life more clearly. They develop the adult understanding that dreams aren't real in the same way that tables and chairs are real. They learn to categorize dream experiences as internal, imaginary, less significant than waking experiences. The vivid, immersive quality of childhood dreams often fades, replaced by more fragmented, less memorable adult dreaming. But in early childhood, dreams hold a weight, a reality, that many adults struggle to recall or understand. There's also a curious phenomenon, well documented but poorly understood, of young children reporting detailed memories of lives they claim to have lived before. They describe places they've never visited, people they've never met, events that occurred before they were born, sometimes with enough specificity and accuracy that researchers have been able to verify the details. A child in Virginia describes life as a pilot who died in World War II, providing the pilot's name, details about crashes, information about family members, all later confirmed through historical records. A child in Lebanon describes being a man who died in a particular village, giving the name, describing the house, the circumstances of death, details the child shouldn't know. These cases have been studied systematically, most extensively by psychiatrist Ian Stevenson and his colleagues at the University of Virginia. They've documented thousands of cases across cultures, looking for fraud, suggestion, alternative explanations. Many cases can be explained through normal means, but a residue remains that resists easy dismissal. Children providing information they shouldn't have access to, describing places they've never been with accuracy, recognizing people from the claimed previous life, displaying behaviors, phobias, or skills that correspond to the previous person's experiences. The standard explanation when confronted with these cases is either fraud or cryptomnesia, hidden memories acquired through forgotten exposure to information that later resurfaces as apparently impossible knowledge. The child overheard adults talking, saw something on television, read something that didn't register consciously, but was retained subconsciously, and later confabulates a story incorporating these fragments. This surely accounts for some cases. But Stevenson's research methodology was rigorous, designed specifically to exclude these possibilities, and still anomalous cases remained. The traditional interpretation, particularly in cultures where reincarnation is accepted, is that these are memories of actual past lives. The soul, or consciousness that now inhabits this child, previously inhabited another body, lived another life, and retained some memories from that existence. When the child is very young, before the current life's experiences have fully overwritten or suppressed them, these past life memories surface, sometimes with remarkable clarity. But there's another interpretation available if we're thinking about dreams as access to parallel realities. Perhaps what children are remembering isn't a past life in linear time, but a parallel life, another version of consciousness existing in an adjacent timeline. Young children, whose consciousness hasn't yet fully anchored to this particular reality, might have easier access to other timelines, other versions of experience. What they describe as past life memories might be experiences from parallel realities where different lives are being lived, lives they're accessing with the same ease they access dreams, which is to say, more easily than adults do. This would explain some of the peculiarities of past life memory cases. The memories often fade as the child ages, typically disappearing by age 6 or 7. This matches the developmental trajectory of consciousness anchoring more firmly to this timeline, becoming more focused, less fluid. The child isn't forgetting a past life. They're losing access to parallel realities as their consciousness settles into the normal adult pattern of being tightly focused in this one reality. It would also explain why the claimed past life often involves someone who died relatively recently, sometimes only years before the child was born. If these are memories from parallel timelines rather than sequential past lives, then temporal proximity makes sense. The closer in time, the more similar the overall state of the world, the easier it might be for consciousness to access. A timeline where someone lived and died in the 1950s is more similar to this timeline in the 1960s than a timeline from the 1800s would be, creating easier access, clearer memories, and it would explain why children sometimes report multiple past lives, or lives that overlap chronologically, which makes no sense in the traditional reincarnation model where consciousness moves sequentially from one body to the next. But if consciousness can access multiple parallel realities, can touch multiple timelines where different versions of life are being lived simultaneously, then reporting multiple lives makes perfect sense. They're not past lives in sequence. They're parallel lives occurring simultaneously in different realities, all accessible to young consciousness that hasn't yet learned to focus exclusively on this one. Children's openness to fantastical experiences, their easy acceptance of impossibilities, their fluid relationship to reality might not be ignorance or undeveloped rational thinking. It might be consciousness in its more natural state, before it's been trained to focus narrowly, before it's learned to filter out access to adjacent realities, before it's fully committed to the project of experiencing this particular timeline exclusively. Children dream more vividly, remember dreams more easily, accept dream logic more readily, not because they're confused about reality, but because their consciousness still moves fluidly between realities in ways that adults have forgotten how to do. As we age, we learn to anchor more firmly. we develop the mental habits and neural patterns that keep consciousness focused here, in this body, this timeline, this version of events. We learn to dismiss dreams as unreal, to categorize them as less important than waking life, to forget them quickly upon waking. We learn to ignore the whispers of other realities, other possibilities, other versions of experience. We become stable, focused, reliably present in consensus reality. We call this growing up, becoming rational, maturing. But perhaps what we're really doing is narrowing, focusing so tightly on this one reality that we lose awareness of the larger landscape. Children, in their fluid consciousness, their easy movement between dreaming and waking, their willingness to accept that many impossible things might be real, are closer to consciousness in its natural state. And the process of growing up is partly the process of learning to restrict consciousness, to focus it through the narrow lens of this particular embodiment in this particular timeline. You wake up, and the dream is there, vivid and clear. You can remember the details, the people you spoke with, the places you visited, the strange but coherent logic that governed everything. You lie still for a moment, holding on to it, knowing from experience that it won't last. And sure enough, within minutes, sometimes within seconds, the dream begins to fade. Details blur, the narrative fragments, and soon you're left with only the vaguest impression, a feeling, a few disconnected images, and the frustrating awareness that moments ago you remembered so much more. This rapid forgetting is one of the most consistent features of dreaming. We forget most dreams completely, never even knowing we had them. The ones we do remember fade quickly unless we write them down or actively rehearse them immediately upon waking. Even then, we're left with an edited version, the parts that translated most easily into waking language and categories, while the fuller, stranger experience slips away irretrievably. Neuroscience explains this through the mechanisms of memory formation. During REM sleep, the neurochemistry of the brain is different. Certain neurotransmitters important for transferring short-term memories into long-term storage are suppressed. The brain regions involved in memory consolidation aren't operating normally. Dreams occur in a state that's not conducive to forming lasting memories, so most dream content is never properly encoded and is lost upon waking. This explanation is accurate as far as it goes. The brain chemistry during dreaming is measurably different, and these differences do affect memory formation. But the explanation focuses on mechanism without addressing purpose. Why would evolution design the system this way? Why would the brain generate such rich, detailed, emotionally significant experiences while simultaneously ensuring that most of them won't be remembered? If dreams are just internal processing, just the brain talking to itself, then perhaps memory suppression makes sense. You don't need to remember the process, only benefit from the results. The brain consolidates memories, processes, emotions, runs maintenance routines, and you wake up refreshed without needing to recall the specific operations that occurred during the night. The forgetting is a feature, not a bug. Keeping your waking consciousness uncluttered by the technical details of how your brain maintains itself. But if dreams are experiences of alternate realities, if your consciousness is genuinely visiting other timelines and living moments from parallel lives, then the forgetting takes on different significance. Perhaps you're not meant to bring those memories back. Perhaps there's a protective function to the amnesia, a necessary boundary that prevents confusion between different timelines, different versions of events, different realities. Imagine if you remembered your dreams with the same clarity and permanence as waking experiences. You'd wake each morning with memories of conversations that never happened here, events that didn't occur in this timeline, versions of people who made different choices and lived different lives. You'd remember being in your house with the extra room that doesn't exist here, talking to your friend about things that only happened in another reality, making decisions based on circumstances that aren't present in this timeline. The confusion would be profound. You'd struggle to maintain a coherent sense of self, a consistent narrative about who you are and what's happened to you. You'd have competing memories of the same periods of time, different versions of events, multiple sets of experiences all claiming to be real. Your ability to function in this reality, to maintain relationships, to make decisions based on this timeline's circumstances would be severely compromised. The forgetting, then, might be essential for maintaining psychological coherence. It's not that the dream experiences weren't real. It's that they belong to other realities, and carrying them fully into this one would create unbearable confusion. So consciousness is designed to release them upon waking, to let them fade back into the background, to preserve only the faintest traces while returning full attention to this timeline's narrative. But the forgetting isn't complete. Sometimes dreams do leave lasting impressions. Sometimes you wake with a feeling, an intuition, a vague sense of something important that you can't quite articulate. Sometimes a dream shifts your emotional state, changes your perspective, influences your decisions in ways you can't consciously trace back to specific dream content. The information bleeds through even when the explicit memory doesn't, affecting this timeline subtly, indirectly, without creating the confusion that full memory transfer would cause. And sometimes, particularly with vivid or emotionally charged dreams, you do remember. The memory persists beyond the usual few minutes, lasting days or years, returning occasionally with surprising clarity. Perhaps these are the dreams that need to be remembered, experiences from other timelines that carry information or perspective particularly relevant to this one. The forgetting mechanism isn't absolute. It allows through what needs to come through while filtering out the vast majority that would only create noise. There's also the phenomenon of dream recall improving with practice. People who keep dream journals, who train themselves to remember dreams, find that they can retain more detail, remember more dreams, access the content more readily. This suggests the forgetting isn't purely mechanical, not just chemistry preventing memory formation. There's a skill component, a learned ability to bridge the gap between dreaming and waking consciousness, to carry memories across the boundary more effectively. If consciousness is traveling between realities during sleep, then learning to remember dreams might be learning to maintain continuity across that travel, to carry experiences from there to here more successfully. The forgetting is the default, the protective mechanism that prevents confusion. But with practice, consciousness can learn to navigate the boundary more skillfully, to bring back more information while still maintaining the necessary separation between timelines. Some spiritual traditions consider dream recall an important practice, not for psychological insight, but for developing consciousness itself. Learning to remember dreams, to maintain awareness across the transition between waking and sleeping, is seen as training for maintaining awareness across other transitions, other boundaries. If consciousness can learn to stay present while moving between dreaming and waking, perhaps it can stay present across other transitions, even the final transition of death. The morning amnesia, rather than being an unfortunate limitation or a design flaw, might be exactly what's needed. A permeable boundary that usually maintains separation, but can be negotiated with skill and intention. A filter that prevents overwhelming confusion while allowing through what's relevant and important. a mechanism that protects the integrity of this timeline's experience while acknowledging that consciousness has access to others. There's a state you can enter with practice that sits between waking and sleeping, neither fully one or the other. Meditators cultivate it deliberately, learning to maintain awareness while the body relaxes into something resembling sleep, the mind becoming quiet but not absent, present but not engaged in the usual way. This is the hypnagogic state, the threshold between consciousness and unconsciousness, and it's remarkably similar to the state just before you fall asleep naturally. Those few moments when images begin to drift through your mind unbidden, when thoughts become less linear, when the boundary between internal and external softens. In this state, people report unusual experiences. Vivid imagery that appears spontaneously, geometric patterns that shift and evolve, faces emerging from darkness, landscapes opening up despite closed eyes. Sometimes there are sounds, voices, music. Sometimes sensations of movement, floating, expanding beyond the boundaries of the body. Sometimes encounters with presences, beings, intelligences that feel separate from the self. These experiences have much in common with dreams, but occur while awareness is still partially anchored in waking consciousness, creating a hybrid state where you're simultaneously here and somewhere else. Traditional meditation practices across various cultures have long worked with these states, recognizing them as access points to something beyond ordinary consciousness. Tibetan Buddhism speaks of the bardo states, transitional phases between death and rebirth, but also between waking and sleeping, between any two states of being. These bardos are considered real places or states, not just metaphors, realms that consciousness moves through, and learning to navigate them is part of spiritual development. The hypnagogic state is one such bardo, a liminal space where consciousness is loosening from one reality but hasn't yet anchored in another. If dreams are visits to alternate realities, then the hypnagogic state might be the beginning of that journey. Consciousness is starting to drift away from its focused anchoring in this timeline, but hasn't yet arrived anywhere else. What you experience in that state might be glimpses of many realities at once, brief touches of multiple timelines, consciousness moving through the space between before settling into a particular alternate reality for the night's dreaming. This would explain the fragmentary kaleidoscopic quality of hypnagogic experiences. You're not yet in any one place long enough to experience it coherently. You're moving through the transition, catching flashes of multiple possibilities, multiple realities, before consciousness settles somewhere for sustained experience. The faces you see might be versions of people who exist in realities you're passing through. The landscapes might be real locations in timelines you're moving toward or away from. The geometric patterns might be, in some sense, the structure of reality itself, the underlying pattern that connects all timelines, visible only in the transitional spaces between them. Other altered states create similar experiences. Certain psychedelic substances, particularly ones that affect serotonin receptors in ways that overlap with dream neurochemistry, produce experiences remarkably similar to intense lucid dreaming. People report visiting other dimensions, meeting entities, accessing information or perspectives that seem to come from outside normal consciousness. Skeptics attribute all of this to the brain malfunctioning under chemical influence, neurons firing in unusual patterns that create vivid hallucinations with no external reference. But if consciousness can access alternate realities during normal sleep, perhaps certain substances facilitate this access in waking states, loosening the normal anchoring mechanisms. allowing consciousness to drift into adjacent timelines while the body remains relatively functional. The experiences aren't hallucinations in the sense of being purely internal. They're perceptions of other realities, accessed through a temporarily loosened connection to this one. The substance doesn't create the content, it creates the conditions for consciousness to move beyond its usual constraints. This doesn't validate every claim made by every person in an altered state. Consciousness moving through alternate realities would still be filtered through the individual's psychology, culture, expectations, and the particular state their brain and body are in. What you perceive and how you interpret it would vary wildly. But underneath the variation, underneath the layers of personal and cultural interpretation, there might be something genuinely being accessed, some dimension or layer or aspect of reality that's normally filtered out. Many meditation traditions aim not for altered states, but for a particular kind of clear, stable awareness that persists across different conditions. The goal is to maintain continuous consciousness through waking, sleeping, and dreaming, to never lose awareness even as the content and context of experience changes. This practice, sometimes called dream yoga or similar names across traditions, treats sleep not as unconsciousness, but as a different kind of consciousness, one that can be explored and understood with the same awareness brought to waking life. Practitioners who develop this skill report that dreams become more lucid, more controllable, but also more real in a certain sense. They're not experiencing hallucinations they can manipulate at will. They're experiencing consistent, rule-bound environments that respond to intention but maintain their own integrity. They describe it as learning to navigate other realities while remaining aware of their nature, maintaining a kind of dual consciousness that remembers this reality while fully engaging with that one. This suggests that the ordinary state where we're unconscious during sleep and forget our dreams isn't the only possibility. Consciousness can learn to remain present across the transition, can maintain continuity between waking and dreaming, can remember and integrate experiences from both. Most people don't develop this capacity because there's no cultural support for it, no training, no recognition that it's possible. But the capacity exists, waiting to be cultivated. The in-between spaces, the liminal states, the moments of transition, these might be where the nature of consciousness and reality becomes most apparent. When you're firmly anchored in waking life, everything feels solid, single, obvious. When you're deep in dreams, you accept that reality completely. But in the transition, in the hypnagogic threshold, in the space between sleeping and waking, the multiplicity becomes visible. You can sense that there are many realities, many possibilities, many versions of experience, and that consciousness moves between them, usually without awareness, but potentially with full presence if it learns how. What meditation and other contemplative practices might be training then isn't special states or mystical experiences for their own sake. They might be training consciousness to maintain awareness across transitions, to recognize its own nature as something that exists independently of any particular state or reality, to navigate the landscape of possibilities with skill and understanding rather than drifting unconsciously from one to another. If you exist in multiple realities simultaneously, if there are countless versions of you living different lives in parallel timelines, making different choices, experiencing different outcomes, then a question emerges that's both simple and profound. Which one is the real you? Is there an original version from which all others diverge? Some primary self that's more fundamentally you than the others? Or are all versions equally real, equally you, just expressed through different circumstances and choices. The question matters because our entire sense of identity rests on continuity, on the feeling that there's a single, coherent self that persists through time, that connects your childhood to your present to your future. You're the same person you were yesterday, even though cells have died and been replaced, even though thoughts and moods have shifted, even though technically nothing physical about you remains exactly the same from moment to moment. Something persists that we call the self, an organizing principle, a continuity of consciousness and memory that makes you recognizably you. But if consciousness can access parallel realities during sleep, if you're experiencing moments from other timelines where other versions of you made different choices, then that continuity becomes complicated. You're not just one continuous thread through time, you're a multiplicity, existing simultaneously in countless configurations, and the you that you identify with, the one reading these words right now, is just one expression among many. Some versions of you are nearly identical. They made the same major choices, live in similar circumstances, differ only in trivial details. Other versions diverged long ago, made fundamentally different decisions, live completely different lives. There might be versions who never learned to read, versions who speak different languages, versions who live in different countries, versions who died young or never made it past childhood. The range of variation is incomprehensible, spanning from nearly identical to utterly unrecognizable. And yet, in some sense, they're all you. They all emerge from the same initial conditions, the same genetic starting point, the same fundamental consciousness choosing different paths through possibility space. If you could somehow meet one of these alternate versions, would you recognize yourself in them? Would you feel kinship, or would they seem like a stranger? Would their experiences feel like yours, or would the divergence be so complete that nothing connects you except origin? The philosopher Derek Parfit wrestled with questions of personal identity, asking what actually matters when we think about the self persisting through time. Is it physical continuity, psychological continuity, some combination? He proposed thought experiments involving brain transplants, teleportation, gradual replacement of neurons, all designed to probe what we really mean when we say someone is the same person over time. His conclusion, roughly, was that personal identity is less important than we think, that what matters is psychological connectedness and continuity, not some metaphysical fact about being the same self. If we extend this thinking to parallel realities, perhaps what matters isn't which version is the real you, but the degree of psychological connectedness and continuity across versions. The versions that made similar choices, that share similar memories and values and patterns of thought, are more connected to you than versions that diverge dramatically. But none is more real than others. Reality doesn't privilege any particular timeline. Each is equally actual, equally grounded, equally experienced from the inside as the real and only life. This perspective is both liberating and terrifying. Liberating because it means you're not trapped in this one version of your life. Other possibilities aren't just theoretical, they're being lived, experienced, realized in realities just as real as this one. Every road not taken in this timeline was taken in others. Every possibility remains alive somewhere. Terrifying because it undermines the specialness of this life, this self, these choices. If all versions are equally real, then nothing you do here carries the weight of being your one true life. You're just one expression among infinite expressions. But perhaps that's missing something important. Because while all versions might be equally real, this is the version you're experiencing right now, from the inside, with full subjective presence. This is where your consciousness is currently focused. The other versions exist certainly, but you're not living them in this moment. You're living this one. And that gives it a kind of primacy, not metaphysical, but experiential. This is your reality right now, regardless of how many other realities there are. When you dream, you might be accessing those other realities, experiencing moments from other versions of your life. But you always return here. This is the timeline your consciousness is primarily anchored to, the life you're meant to navigate, the version of yourself you're responsible for. The others exist, but this one is yours in a particular way, the one you're actually living with continuous awareness when awake, the one where your choices directly shape what happens next. Some philosophical traditions, particularly in Buddhism, suggest that the self is an illusion, a convenient fiction we tell ourselves to create a sense of continuity and identity where none actually exists. There's no unchanging essence that persists, just a flow of experience, moment to moment, with memory and habit creating the appearance of a continuous self. If this is true even within a single timeline, then extending the self across multiple timelines doesn't create a new problem. It just reveals the nature of the illusion more clearly. Perhaps what we call the self is actually consciousness itself, not the particular thoughts, memories, personality traits, or life circumstances that vary across timelines. Those are content, the specific expression of consciousness in particular conditions. But consciousness, the basic awareness that experiences whatever is happening, that might be the same across all versions. The you that experiences this life and the you that experiences another life might be the same consciousness, just focused through different lenses, embodied in different circumstances, expressing through different personalities. If this is correct, then the philosophical question of which self is real dissolves. There is one consciousness experiencing countless expressions. The expressions are all real as expressions, none privileged over others. But the consciousness itself is singular, or at least not multiplied in the way the expressions are. When you dream and experience another timeline, it's not a different consciousness. It's your consciousness accessing a different expression of itself, a different life it's living through different choices and circumstances. This doesn't fully solve the puzzle. Questions remain about identity, continuity, what makes you you across different versions. But it offers a framework where the multiplicity of selves doesn't fragment identity completely. There's a level at which you remain unified, not as a particular personality or life story, but as the consciousness that experiences all of them, the awareness that inhabits different realities through different expressions but remains fundamentally the same awareness. We've travelled far tonight, through neuroscience and quantum physics, through dreams and parallel realities, through questions about consciousness and identity and the nature of existence itself. We've explored the possibility that dreams aren't just neural noise or psychological processing, but actual visits to alternate timelines, moments when your consciousness loosens from this reality and drifts into others. We've considered evidence, pondered implications, followed the thread of an idea that's both ancient and cutting edge, both intuitive and scientifically challenging. And now we arrive at a place that might feel unsatisfying if you came here looking for answers. Because the truth is, we don't know. We can't prove that dreams are alternate realities. We can't demonstrate that consciousness travels between parallel timelines during sleep. The evidence is suggestive, the experience is compelling, the theoretical framework's intriguing, but none of it reaches the threshold of scientific proof. The question remains open, unanswered, hovering in that space between possibility and certainty where the most interesting questions often live. You might feel disappointed by this. You might have hoped that by the end of this journey, we'd have resolved something, reached a conclusion, decided definitively whether dreams are hallucinations or windows into other worlds. But some questions aren't meant to be answered quickly, or perhaps at all. Some mysteries are more valuable for the wondering they inspire than for any answer they might eventually yield. Living with mystery is a skill, one that doesn't come naturally in a culture that values certainty, that wants definitive answers, that treats not knowing as a problem to be solved rather than a condition to be inhabited. We're trained to reach conclusions, to take positions, to decide what we believe and defend it. Uncertainty feels uncomfortable, like intellectual failure, like we're not trying hard enough to figure things out. But perhaps some uncertainties aren't failures. Perhaps they're invitations to remain open, curious, willing to sit with questions that don't resolve. The question of whether dreams are alternate realities is one such invitation. You can live with it without deciding. You can hold it gently. Let it shape how you pay attention to your dreams, how you think about consciousness and reality, without needing it to be proven true or false. You can notice what changes when you consider the possibility seriously, when you treat your dreams as potentially real experiences rather than dismissing them as meaningless noise. Maybe you start remembering dreams more clearly, paying attention to details you would have previously ignored. Maybe you notice patterns, recurring locations, familiar strangers, elements that suggest coherence and persistence rather than random generation. Maybe you have experiences that feel more like visiting than imagining, moments when the dream seems to be showing you something rather than you creating it. Or maybe nothing changes, and dreams continue to feel exactly like what neuroscience says they are. Your brain processing information in ways that produce subjective experiences with no external reference. Either way, you've engaged with a possibility, opened yourself to wonder, allowed your understanding of reality to remain flexible rather than rigid, and that openness itself has value, regardless of whether the specific question about dreams gets answered. Because reality is stranger than we typically assume, full of phenomena we don't fully understand, governed by laws that seem solid until you look closely and find them dissolving into probability and uncertainty, and questions that reach beyond current knowledge. Science is magnificent, the best tool we have for understanding the physical universe, for testing claims, for building reliable knowledge about how things work. But science is also provisional, always incomplete, operating at the edge of what we know with vast territories of what we don't know stretching beyond. The current scientific understanding of consciousness is remarkably limited. We know a lot about brains, about neurons, about the neural correlates of consciousness, but we don't know what consciousness is, why it exists, how subjective experience emerges from objective processes, or what it's capable of beyond what we've already observed. This ignorance isn't failure, it's the frontier, and at the frontier, speculation is valuable. Asking what if, even when you can't prove the answer, helps map the territory, suggests where to look, what to test, how to think about problems that don't yet have solutions. The question of whether dreams are alternate realities might seem too speculative to take seriously, but it connects to real questions in physics about the multiverse, real questions in neuroscience about consciousness, real questions in philosophy about identity and experience. Holding the question doesn't mean abandoning rigor. It means acknowledging that we're still figuring things out, and interesting possibilities deserve consideration even when they can't be proven yet. And there's something personally meaningful about the question, something that goes beyond academic interest. If dreams are alternate realities, if you're genuinely visiting other timelines and experiencing other versions of your life, then sleep becomes a different kind of experience. It's not just rest or maintenance, it's exploration, connection, and expansion of your existence beyond the confines of this single timeline. You're not trapped in one life, one set of choices, one sequence of events. You participate in a multiplicity, touching other possibilities, other versions of yourself and others, accessing a richness that makes this life feel less isolated, less singular, less like the only reality that matters. Even if it's not literally true, even if dreams are exactly what mainstream science says they are, the question changes something about how you relate to sleep and dreaming. It invites you to treat dreams with more respect, to see them as meaningful rather than dismissible, to recognize that consciousness during sleep is still consciousness, still worthy of attention and care, and that shift in attention might itself be valuable, might open up aspects of your inner life that you've been ignoring or undervaluing. So perhaps the point isn't to answer the question definitively. Perhaps the point is to live with it, to let it work on you, to allow the possibility to coexist with the uncertainty, to remain curious without needing to be certain. This is what it means to embrace mystery, not as a gap in knowledge that frustrates us, but as a quality of reality that invites us deeper, that reminds us how much remains unknown, how much wonder still exists at the edges of understanding. Shabkat. And so we arrive at the end of this long, quiet exploration. This journey through questions without definitive answers, through possibilities that shimmer at the edge of what we can know. We've wondered together whether dreams might be more than the brain talking to itself, whether consciousness might be traveling when it seems to be resting, whether the multiverse might be not just a theoretical construct, but a nightly experience, visited and explored every time you close your eyes and drift away from this particular version of reality. We don't know if it's true. We may never know, at least not with the kind of certainty that science demands, the kind of proof that settles questions permanently. But the wondering itself has been worthwhile, hasn't it? Following the thread, considering the possibilities, allowing yourself to imagine that reality might be stranger and more expansive than daily life suggests. Even if dreams are exactly what conventional wisdom says they are, even if consciousness never leaves this single timeline, the question has reminded us of something important. Dreams are a gift, regardless of their ultimate nature. They're experiences you have, moments of consciousness that feel real while they're happening, that generate genuine emotions, genuine insights, genuine wonder. They expand your experience beyond the constraints of waking life, beyond the practical demands and social expectations and physical limitations that govern your days. In dreams, you can fly, transform, visit impossible places, meet people who don't exist here, explore aspects of yourself that have no outlet in ordinary circumstances. This freedom, this nightly departure from the known, is valuable simply as experience, as a reminder that consciousness is more flexible and creative than it appears during waking hours. And dreams connect you to something larger than individual existence. Everyone dreams. Every person throughout history has closed their eyes and been transported somewhere else, has experienced that strange dissolution of ordinary reality and emergence into something different. Across all cultures, all eras, all conditions of life, dreaming is universal. It's one of the few truly shared human experiences, something that connects you to every other person who has ever lived or ever will live. When you dream, you're participating in something ancient, something that predates civilization, language, everything we think of as distinctively human. You're doing what consciousness has always done, expanding beyond its immediate anchoring and exploring. There's comfort in that universality. Whatever dreams are, wherever they take you, you're not alone in experiencing them. The mystery you're part of every night is a mystery that encompasses all of humanity, perhaps all conscious beings everywhere. Your private dreams connect to something collective, something that suggests consciousness itself has dimensions and capabilities we're only beginning to understand. And in that connection, there's a kind of peace, a sense that you're part of something much larger than your individual life, much older than your personal history. The question we've been exploring tonight, whether dreams are alternate realities, points toward an even larger question. What is reality? Not the specific question of whether multiple timelines exist, but the more fundamental question of what we mean when we call something real. Waking life feels real because it's consistent, shared, governed by stable laws, but dreams feel real too while you're in them. Near-death experiences feel real, altered states feel real, love and beauty and meaning feel real even though they're not physical objects you can measure or touch. Reality, it turns out, isn't as simple as the distinction between what exists and what doesn't. It's layered, complex, experienced differently, depending on the state of consciousness you're in and the tools you use to investigate. Perhaps the greatest gift of dreams, then, is that they keep this question alive for us. Every night you experience something that feels real, but isn't real in the usual sense, and in doing so, you're reminded that reality itself is more mysterious than it appears. Dreams are cracks in the certainty of waking life, moments when the solid world softens and reveals itself as less fixed, less singular, less completely understood than daylight suggests. And through those cracks, wonder enters. The possibility that there's more to existence than what's visible and measurable and agreed upon. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, as your consciousness begins its nightly journey into wherever it goes when you're not awake, you can hold all of this lightly. You don't need to decide whether dreams are alternate realities or neural static. You don't need to resolve anything or reach any conclusions. You can simply notice what happens, pay attention to where you go, remain curious about what you experience, and let the mystery be mysterious. Your dreams, whatever they are yours to explore. They're experiences you have, landscapes you walk through, moments of consciousness that belong to you, even if they don't make sense to anyone else, even if they dissolve into forgetting by morning. They might be windows into other realities, or they might be your brain's way of processing information, or they might be something we haven't even imagined yet. But they're real as experiences, real as moments of consciousness, real as the ongoing adventure of being aware, of existing, of moving through the strange and beautiful fact of being someone to whom things happen. The night is here now, patient and deep, ready to receive you as you let go of these questions, as you release your grip on waking consciousness and allow yourself to drift. Sleep well, wandering one. Sleep well, explorer of inner and outer and in-between spaces. Sleep well, consciousness temporarily freed from the anchors that hold it to this particular timeline, this particular version of now. The dreams are waiting, whatever they are. The mystery continues, beautiful and unsolved, and you're part of it, have always been part of it, will always be part of it. This great unfolding question of what it means to be conscious, to dream, to exist across all the realities there are or might be. Rest now and dream deeply. The morning will come, and with it the return to waking life, to this timeline, to the self you recognize and the world you navigate. But for now, for these hours of darkness, you're free. Free to wander, to explore, to touch other possibilities, to be more than this single version of yourself in this single version of reality. The cosmos dreams through you, and you, beautiful mystery, dream right back. Good night.